Thank you for staying. Time now for the news. And in our first story, President Akakpo is ruling out a reshuffle of his appointees, at least for now, insisting he will not play into the opposition National Democratic Congress's plans to destabilize his government. The subject of a reshuffle has been high on the political front burner, with some calling on the president to inject some energy and dynamism into his administration. According to a section of Ghanaians, some of the ministers have failed to live up to expectation, while others have simply failed to make an impact and should be shown the exit. Now, in an interview on Tamale-based North Star FM, President Akakpo said he does a daily basis assessment of his ministers to determine whether they are delivering.
But even if I did, Gaddafi, with respect, is not on your radio station.
You will not reshuffle anybody here.
I'm not going to reshuffle anybody here. That is a matter that I will take in an appropriate way. But let me say it again. I know that people are making a lot of noise about this matter. But several of the people who are responsible for assisting me to steer the country out of the difficulties that we inherited and out of the difficulties that have subsequently come are still in place. And many of them, for me, have done an outstanding work. Their output has been considerable. And that's what I look at. There's an issue about reshuffle or the performance of ministers. It isn't as if it is something that every now and then my mind comes to. It's a daily preoccupation for me. I'm required on a daily basis to ask myself whether the output of particular ministers is up to the mark. I am not the final authority, and if they're not up to the mark, I'm required to act. But if the output measures the expectations, then I don't have any strong reasons to heed the calls. The calls come from all kinds of reasons. NDC wanting to destabilize your government is one. There are people who are also looking for jobs.
Especially since yesterday. People have been sending me CVs to give to you.
well, there you are. But I'm not disputing that there is quite a lot of attention on it. But I also think it is important for us to have a really holistic look at this matter and be certain of what we're doing. But as I say, it's not no responsible leader, president, prime minister will announce, I intend to reshuffle my... No. If you're going to do it, you do it. If you're not going to do it, you just continue. So that's what I have to say. So I think that what the processes that the MPP went in order to now have a new national officer, regional officer, constituency in itself tells you a lot about the MPP. One, the efficiency of our structures. We had to elect polling station executives, 5 per polling station, to over 38,000 polling stations across the country. Here, everywhere, in which party members, in a very decent, peaceful manner, went ahead to elect these 5 polling station executives. We had to elect over 6,000 electoral area coordinators by the same process. And again, constituency executives in the 276, because SAL is now part of the equation. We had to do that. We then went ahead to elect the 16 regional executives of the party. And then finally, the very, very impressive show that took place at Akakpo Stadium that have brought the new General Secretary and the new National Organizer and others, the new National Chairman into office. You look at this whole process, it has been well conducted, it has been peaceful. Yes, there have been isolated difficulties here and there. Such a large exercise, national exercise, you cannot expect it to be 100%. waterproof. There will be one or two incidents.
Okay.
But overall, the image that the NPP has given is of a purposeful party.
Well, some thoughts there being shared by President Akufo-Addo. But in our second story, residents of Canoe Afrancho in the Ashanti region want a factory in the area relocated. This was after a fire incident led to the death of 18-year-old Stephen Ajekum. He died in an attempt to control the fire with an extinguisher. His mother says he was at the factory to assist a church member who owned the facility. Malik Ewuku reports.
The death of Stephen Ajekum is a blow to residents. Family members, friends and sympathizers have gathered at the house of the deceased's parents. Relatives console sisters of the deceased, wailing uncontrollably. Mother of the deceased, Pokia Ajekum, is devastated.
In my sleep, I heard shouts. I woke up to learn Eja Pierre's house is on fire. I ran to the house. I met one young man salvaging some stuff and asked him if everyone is safe. He said my son was inside. They went in together. I asked them to help me save my son, but they told me he was at church.
Stephen is the third son of her 5 children. She says her son was only helping a church member and a family friend.
He is on vacation awaiting reopening in August, and see what has happened. We were preparing for him to return to school in August.
The fire, which lasted for almost 10 hours, swept through a plastic recycling factory and spread to adjoining houses. Properties worth thousands of cedis were burnt to ashes. The owner of the factory and his wife collapsed at the scene of the fire. Medical director at Breman SD Hospital, Dr. Anthony Eric Eshan, says the couple have been treated and discharged.
When we got the news, we had the first thing that came to our mind was a suspicion of a possible smoke inhalation. So we examined them and I realized that they didn't have any issue as far as that is concerned. They were traumatized in terms of they had psychological trauma. So we detained the husband and then took him through the process of recovery. And then there were also other issues that he had that we admitted for monitoring. For now, he is fine. He's in good spirit. A lot of people came around, especially the chaplains and then the counselors came around from the church.
According to residents, this is not the first time the waste recycling factory has gutted a fire. They are unhappy with the sighting of the recycling factory.
Factory, the son, Papa and Yaman or Yanuahan was saying, I will be Waha. And then the first time out to her. And then the first time out to her. We count 3 times. Or the load bank or 4. Or the load bank or 4 you boob. Or the load baha. Because I never be also trade area. That's what the trade and you have a 5 year Guam. Sunday man or day higher. They come out 3 times. And it's an agent in Sem.
The fire service are currently investigating the cause of the fire. Malik Awuku's report read to you.
Let's talk health now. And the first phase of the maternity and children's block at the Komfo-Anokye Teaching Hospital is scheduled for completion in May 2024. Work on the 507-bed capacity project started in February 2021 following the demolition of a 44-year-old building over structural integrity issues. Health Minister Kwaku Agyeman-Mano is excited at the progress and quality of work done as contractors are sure of meeting deadlines. Ohiming Teria now reports.
The 45-year-old maternity block project, started by the Echampon regime, remained uncompleted despite several attempts by successive governments. The decision by the MPP government to construct a new maternity and children's ward following several technical, architectural and structural tests on the old building suggested its structural integrity could not be guaranteed. Weak foundations, rusty iron rods, poor quality of concrete beams, excessive corrosion of reinforcing steels and others raised serious concerns. The Ministry of Health awarded an engineering, procurement and construction contract to Brazilian company contractor for construction of the new block. Work on the new project started in February last year as the old block was demolished. The 5-story building to be equipped with modern theaters, pediatric neurology, hematology, cardio and respiratory wards will provide a one-stop modern care for mothers, newborns and children.
We also have one theater room on the delivery floor to ensure that in case of emergency you don't have to move anybody to another floor. And we have 2 minor theaters also on the ground floor, so making it a total of 10 theaters for this facility.
It will contain pediatric infectious disease unit, mother and baby unit and pediatric renal unit. Project consultants, Akito Consult, are optimistic of meeting the 2024 deadline. Nana Ebu Bonsra is the lead consultant.
The original idea was to rehabilitate that 19-something building. But we found that structurally it was not capable of completing it. We have given ourselves a debt trap. Right, okay. So when the idea came that let's use the same quantum of money to do a new thing, we now ended up, in fact, the original thing we were expecting about 750 beds, but now we, under phase 1, we are doing about 500 beds, and then there's a phase 2, which is going to be another tower block on top of the OPD, which will match with this. 24 May, we are sure of the completion.
Health Minister Kwaku Agyeman-Manu, during a visit to the project site, expressed satisfaction on progress. He says the relocation of a nearby basic school will give more space for the construction of an ambulance bay.
This is a project that couldn't have failed us. It's right on the heart of the president, and I've taken it upon myself to deliver. And so the president keeps on asking about how far. And that is one of the reasons why I decided to come and see it myself. I'm so excited about work so far done. It gives me a lot of hope and confidence that this project will finish within the contract duration period. And I'm happy with the work so far. There are a few additions that we may have to do. I've asked them to cost for us to see the cost implications of what we want to do. A basement for a car park, linking the new block to the old facilities so that those who are assessing might not have a chance to go out into a public place in the traffic to come back. We are going to relocate the schools here. We've got approval for that so that we can build and fit a proper ambulance service place to help the facility.
From Kumasi, for JoyNews, Oyemi reporting.
Let's now take you to the Bono East region, where the unavailability of classroom structures has compelled kindergarten pupils of the Apaso DA Basic School in the Kintampo South District to learn under trees. The school also has inadequate furniture and teaching materials, no toilet facilities, no ICT laboratory to aid the study of information and communications technology. The situation, according to some of the pupils, is heavily affecting general academic activity of the school as teaching and learning ceases each time it rains. Here's Anas Sabit's report.
Located along the Techiman Kintampo Highway, the Apaso DA Basic School, with a population of over 700 pupils, is being bedeviled with several challenges. Key amongst them is the lack of infrastructure, forcing the school's kindergarten pupils to study under trees. Teachers of the school, through their collective efforts, managed to construct these benches without tables to save the poor children from sitting on the floor. This is the school's staff common room, and each time it rains, the teachers, with the help of the students, would have to move the teaching materials to one of the classrooms for safekeeping. Though the teachers declined to speak to us on camera following a directive from the Kintampo South District Education Directorate, they disclosed to us that teaching and learning ceases each time it rains. Deborah Anochiwa is a resident and a concerned parent who live close to the school. She says the situation is affecting teaching and learning. The school is in a terrible situation. With this large population, the pupils do not have a sitting place, and each time it rains, they have to join their colleagues in the higher classrooms, and they are always congested. Some of the pupils share with us what they go through on daily basis. Our brothers at the nursery level suffer a lot because when the rain starts, they move their chairs and board to the other classes, so we suffer a lot whenever it rains. Beyond the lack of classroom structures, the school is without adequate furniture, reading materials, and an ICT laboratory. Kobna Goffred says the situation is affecting academic activities in general. We do not have chairs. All our chairs are broken. Our toilets has broken down too, and we do not have an ICT laboratory. So we are appealing to government to help build one for us and supply us with reading materials. These poor people here have a common plea. They want government and philanthropists to come to their aid by building classroom facilities for them. We are appealing to government to come to our aid by building classroom facilities and furniture for us. We are appealing to the president and government as a whole to come to the aid of the pupils here in Apaso DA by providing them with furnitures and classroom facilities.
So this has been the situation here in Apaso along the Techiman-Kintampo highway, and the situation, according to the peoples and some community members here, is terrible. They are calling on philanthropists and those in authorities to come to their aid to save their bright future. From Apaso, here in the Kintampo South District of the Bernice region, my name is Lansah reporting for JoyNews.
Well, from the Bono East region, Member of Parliament for Yendi, Farouk Aliyu Mahama, and a Mission 360 are seeking to augment health delivery at the Yendi Hospital with the construction of an emergency and trauma center. Correspondent Martina Bugri reports the new center, when complete, will serve the Eastern Corridor.
The Yendi Hospital serves as a referral hospital to most of the hospitals in the Eastern Corridor. The emergency and trauma center, when completed, is expected to upgrade the services at the hospital. Speaking on the sidelines of the president's visit to Yendi as part of his two-day tour of the northern region, the MP for Yendi, Farouk Aliyu Mahama, said so far about $300,000 has been raised to commence work.
This hospital is called the Yendi Emergency Trauma Center. I came into partnership with Mission 316. They are from the United States of America. We had a fundraising with them. We invited a U.S. ambassador in Accra. I was part of the fundraising. We raised a lot of money, almost $300,000. We came in, we started the project. I again added another $50,000, and I'm looking to add another $20,000 to put an emergency center that will not only take care of Yendi, but take care of the Eastern Corridor enclave. Just like the mortuary, after 30 years of neglect in the Yendi Hospital, I renovated the Yendi Hospital with over $100,000, and it's to the people of Dagbo and the people of the Eastern Corridor. So these are the things that we are bringing on board to let people understand that, my sister, we are taking Yendi to a new level, and that new level is the new Yendi city.
Alhaji Farouk said he's also partnering a German company to raise some tourist sites in the Yendi municipality. Now you talked of tourism.
Yes.
We know Yendi has a lot of tourist sites.
Yes.
Which are the specific ones you are looking
at? Another two are the German cemetery. We are having a partnership with a German company. We are coming to remodelize the German cemetery. If you look, We have the Greenwich Meridian. Recently, I launched the Greenwich Meridian. Yendi is the center of the Greenwich Meridian, and people must know. And I did an edifice here some time ago. We are going to build an ultramodern tourist center, which is the Greenwich Meridian. Tourists will come, make profit, get to know. Yendi, my sister, is the traditional capital of Dagbo, and you are talking to the traditional capital of Dagbo MP. And I must also want to see my people move into that direction. Let us also be the people that needed that benefits of support from the people and the president. And I can tell you that, my sister, with your support, block by block, we will rebuild Yendi.
He said the new Yendi project agenda is still on and more projects are coming up.
Before I became a member of parliament, I thought that the Yendi that we deserve and the vision that Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo and Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia was a vision that was entrusted in my vision. So I decided to say the new Yendi city is a Yendi that is coming with the new ideas, new mindsets, new infrastructure development, new roads, new mentality of geared towards nothing but peace and development. And the president has made my work so easy by making sure that if you look at the Tamale Yendi road that is coming, it's a new road that is going to broaden the horizon of Yendi. If you look at the Eastern Corridor and today, the shortcuts that the Vice President is going to do to open the Yendi roads, if you look at the inner roads, if you look at the UDS that we want to establish in Yendi.
Well, it's a wrap for the news on that note, but we serve you the news review up next. Do stay with us. Thank you for staying with us. Thank you for joining the news review right here on the AM show. And boy, are we glad to give you Liz Hayford-Asari, media consultant, who joins the conversation. Good morning, Liz. I think you would have to unmute.
Good morning, and how are you? I'm
well. I'm doing well. How about you?
I'm blessed.
Great to hear that you are blessed. And it's been another week. It's been a full week since we last had an interaction. I would ask you in between, based on, what we see as far as our economy is concerned, the exchange rate and all of that. We'll be talking about these as we dig into the papers. But what has life been like for you over the course of the last week? The last time I went to the pumps was yesterday, and it cost me a pretty penny. Not that much has changed, but each time you go, it feels as though you had received a slap on both cheeks. That's my experience. I don't know about you, but what has it been like over the course of the last week?
It's the same. It's the same at the pump as it is in the market. If you go to the market to buy stuff and you bought it at a certain price yesterday, be sure that today when you go, the price is different. And that is how bad it is. I used to send to the market before, but now I have to go myself, because now you have to you can't just write a list and think that you get everything on that list. And you can't think that those people who are doing you a favor by doing your marketing are cheating you. You need to go to the market to see it for yourself. So for me, that is at the fore. And yesterday somebody said something that got me in stitches. He says, "Oh, you're not losing weight intentionally. You're losing weight because of the system we are in now." Yeah, I mean, so that's why you're losing weight. If you were eating 3 times a day, maybe you've cut it down to 2 or 1, and because that is what your pocket can afford, and that's why you're losing weight. And I best start laughing. But for some people, that is very true. I mean, we can't even have 3 square meals. Not even 2. People complain. Some fathers and mothers have had to give up eating probably for their children to have a good meal or something like that. And the system is terrible. It will get better though.
I guess with time, it ought to get better, because the squeeze on the economy, the squeeze on our pockets cannot possibly last forever. It would be really difficult to, take something of the sort. But let's get into the papers this morning. we start with the Daily Dispatch newspaper. It says, continuing voter registration for 2024 elections. I am against the guarantor system and only Ghana card usage. That's according to Ben Efson. It's on the back page of his own paper, the paper he edits. But US to get its version of unique digital ID card soon. These are interesting sometimes when I see these stories because the UK, the US, they already have these systems in different forms. But I'll be going into that story just to get what further detail this one gives. Kenyans brace for crucial elections today. Will it be Odinga or Ruto? Some are rooting for Ruto and some say it is Odinga's time. Raila Odinga. But how will things pan out? How will the cookie crumble? Only time will tell. I almost broke the 8 in 2008. I lost the elections by 23,000 votes, by a whisker, basically. Akufo-Addo has been talking in that latest discourse on a radio station. But let's get into some of the stories in the Daily Dispatch newspaper. Page 11 is where I'm going to start from. And it says, so let me get to that story. It's supposed to be on page 11. The US to get its version of a unique digital ID card soon. Let's see where that story possibly could have gone to. Okay, let's check. So this is something that the newspapers tend to do to us. It's called matricule. They tell you it's on page this, and then before you realize, it's actually on page 2 of that newspaper. So, United States getting its own version of Ghana card as digital ID bill sees action in the House and Senate. A bill from Representative Republican Bill Foster, that is a Democrat. So he's Representative Bill Foster, Democrat for Illinois, and its Senate companion would raise the federal government's profile in the digital ID ecosystem. A bill meant to ramp up federal government participation in the digital identity ecosystem is inching closer to passage. Now, the bill is poised to be advanced by the House Committee on Oversight and Reform, and a Senate version was just introduced. The bipartisan bill was first introduced by Representative Bill Foster in 2020, but never voted out of committee. It also didn't get a Senate version in that session of Congress. Foster reintroduced the measure last year. Now, just to look at some deliverables of the bill, and we shall wrap it there. The bill includes a few deliverables, but the main impact will likely be felt from its proposed policy shift that puts the federal government more squarely in the digital ID business. This all comes in the midst of a government still grappling with increased identity fraud since the start of the pandemic. Identity fraud losses shot up from $16.9 billion in 2019 to $56 billion in 2020, according to Javelin Strategy and Research. So this is a move there technically to prevent the work of hackers, like has been mentioned, identity theft, among others. But my only question with this story is that it creates the picture as though the US were now getting an identity system, which is not the case. They've always had that. They've been eons ahead of us. So let's not paint that picture. That is my only problem. But your quick thoughts on that, Liz?
Yes, and I think that the identity cards they had were being issued, I think, state by state.
Yep.
And so you had the identity card, but it showed which state you were coming from.
Exactly.
And so if they're doing it federal, it's because, like they have said, identity fraud, hackers, theft, So they're just trying to marry the systems so that instead of it being state, it is federal, so it is for the whole of the US.
Exactly.
And it covers everybody. And so, like you said, it's just a step, it's just a grade higher, if you ask me. So it doesn't matter which state you really belong to, you're in the US, and therefore there are particular things on the card that will probably just single out your identity and nobody can take it from you.
Well, we can also check out this story before I do the one representing the thoughts of Ben Efson. On page 5 today of the Daily Dispatch newspaper, of fuel-less ambulances and fuel-full V8s, of fuel-less ambulances and fuel-full V8s. It's from Eric's diary, and Eric Mensah Ayete works with the multimedia group. I am very pleased to say that. He has this wonderful piece on page 5. It's continued from yesterday that you can check out. But he talks about how, while most of the secondary and tertiary audience of my message clapped loudly for my input, my primary target, Professor Ahmed Nuhu Zakaria, looked at me coolly. Of course, he's referring to the boss of the National Ambulance Service. After the applause died down, he raised his hand with his forefinger at the fore. When the chairman signaled him to proceed, he, in his characteristic public servant diplomatic fashion, said, "Thank you very much for the brilliant suggestion. But my reaction will be that since we are just about to start, we cannot do that, because if we advertise and the people call for our services in their numbers and we can't meet it, what happens?" So you can check out more details. It's very interesting. But it brings to mind, Liz, all this talk about people who are in emergency situations having to fuel ambulances, and how bad, egregious that is. Emergency situation in other jurisdictions, in a few minutes you get help. Here it can take hours, and we see people die, like we saw recently, that pregnant woman who lost her life. And of course, the comparative, what he places side by side with this. 600 cedis called for fuel, in some instances, maybe more. And you have these V8s that park, and even while parked, their engines are still on, and they are burning fuel. So it creates a clear dichotomy where our priorities lie as a people. Maybe your quick reflection on that before we do Ben Efson's thinking.
It is a very sad situation, if you ask me. And having been a Red Crosser, it's painful to see people that can be saved lose their lives. If you're talking about fueling the ambulances, it's not just the fuel, even the equipment to offer first aid the moment you put the victim on board. Sometimes it's not readily available. And to think that, like you're saying, the VA standing somewhere waiting for the boss because his car should be cool by the time he sits in, it's very sad and it's very disheartening. Where are priorities? I mean, if these people who are driving in the V8s are supposed to be serving us, and yet they're leaving us to die, then there is a question mark, a big question mark. And if you're talking about ambulances and the victim having to fuel the ambulance, what if I am passing and I see somebody in distress and I call for an ambulance? Do I have to fuel the ambulance even when I don't know the person who's in distress and I'm only trying to help? So there are a lot of things that are going on that are not right. And why should an ambulance be sitting without fuel when you don't know when an emergency call will come in? These are questions that beg answers. And again, who is running the National Ambulance Service and who is financing the service they're providing? As
for the financing, what they ought to get, they're definitely not getting. And they tell you about their fuel allocations, for example, and how they have to spread that across the entirety of the country, which means that, if I'm not mistaken, is it about 1,000 or 2,000 cedis per month? And their focus usually is those who have been involved in accidents, road accidents. So sometimes when you come with other issues, we have an emergency for a pregnant person, maybe someone has had some sort of injury, then you just might have to cough up some money. While you are in no position to do anything, family members or you yourself might have to cough up some money just so you can get emergency care at the next available hospital facility. That is if you even get a bed, because there's also no bed syndrome that could meet you, even in the case of an emergency. So those are the dynamics
when
list
you look
to
at
this.
the picture you're painting a picture for the elite. I mean, because not everybody has that amount of money at home to be able to fuel an ambulance 600 cedis.
Exactly.
People can't even have one meal a day. So if they call you and there's a call of distress and you're now waiting to get money, then you probably just say, let the person die. But is that what we want to do as a people?
And we also ought to look, Liz, so the point is, it is illegal for the ambulance service to require that anybody pay for these services. It is illegal. But they've also explained that this is what it has come down to. It is illegal, but this is what it has come down to. And I do not know whether even today, as we speak, it's still not happening. While it is an illegality.
Again, the question is that who is the National Ambulance Service under? Which organization is
Professor
it under?
Zachariah.
And why are we not raising riots about the services that we are supposed to be receiving? Because if the nation is supposed to be giving them the monies to be able to run efficiently, that's what we should be doing. And we should stop hiding our heads in the sand and pretending that the problems that are there are not there. They are there. People are suffering. So let's do things right. I believe that this is a conversation that must be had if we want to ensure that there's proper health service in the system. Everybody who is providing health service and needs the finances to do so should get what they need, because it is our lives that matter.
Right. Let's take a quick look at this and say goodbye to the Daily Dispatch newspaper. Continuing voter registration for 2024 elections, I am against the guarantor system and only Ghana card usage. Ben Efson says so. And he has advised the Electoral Commission to find common ground for the voter registration exercise it intends to embark on. Mr. Efson, his call comes on the background of the former Electoral Commissioner, Dr. Kwejo Afarijan, calling on the EC not to use the Ghana card as the only form of identity to get people registered as voters. Take note, only form. They are not saying it can't be used, but only form. According to the former EC boss, the move by the EC will disenfranchise millions of Ghanaian voters. Now, speaking to the paper's political desk yesterday, Efson said, quote, as you speak to me now, not all Ghanaians have the Ghana card, and there is no guarantee that should we make it a law that only the Ghana card can be a form of identification, all eligible Ghanaians would have it. On the guarantor system, Efson said, quote, I think that system has been abused. Take a scenario of a non-Ghanaian who lives in a community and always attends rallies of Party A. When the occasion for continuing voter registration comes up, you will get a situation where supporters of Party A will lie and vouch that he is a Ghanaian to be registered as a voter. So these are some of the gray areas, problematic areas that we ought to be looking at. But for you, Liz, what do you see when it comes to this entire bit of Ghana card, vote, no Ghana card, no vote, at least for the continuing registration of voters?
We don't want to disenfranchise anybody. And so if you look at the rolling out of the Ghana card and the rate at which it is going, currently, they've not been able to roll out to those who are eligible for. And so the question then is, when it comes to those who are 18, what happens? We probably should be looking at a system where even at birth, if you get a Ghana card, by the time you're 18, the system upgrades itself. But we don't have that. We don't have that. And we have a lot of people who do not have the Ghana card who are not even pushing to get the Ghana card because it's cumbersome getting the Ghana card. If you go to the rural areas, they'll tell you that, oh, I can't leave my farm and go and wait for hours on end to get a Ghana card. And I've talked to quite a number of people who are outside of the main city. And they feel that, well, I've lived my life all this time and nothing has happened. Maybe when it comes to voting, they would think that it is important because now there's a system that's trying to make it only the Ghana card. But I don't see it happening overnight. It's a gradual process, and I agree that we shouldn't use only the Ghana card. I have wondered how you can say that somebody has a passport and the person is not a Ghanaian, because when you look at the requirements to get a passport, your birth certificate and all that, then the passport should be credible. Unless they're giving passports, they themselves are giving passports, or we ourselves are giving passports to non-Ghanaians, then we would have a question. So I think that we should be particular. And when you talk about non-guarantors, then it is a worry for me. Non-guarantors because we have abused the system. But what if the guarantors are your parents and they're Ghanaians and they have a voter's ID and they have a Ghana card, they have a voter's ID and they have a passport? Are you saying that they can't vouch for their child, their nephew, a relative that they've lived with all their lives? I mean, I don't know what to think, but I think that there are questions that should be taken into consideration. And if we're doing something, we need to do it properly.
Right.
And we need to be on the same page as a people. I mean, if it's only Ghana card, what happens to those who have not received Ghana cards yet, or those who would not have received their Ghana cards in 2024? Does that mean that we are disenfranchising them?
Those who are turning 18. Tied to that, in the Daily Guide newspaper, Mahama Ayariga supports EC to use Ghana card for voting. But is that caption is exactly correct? Because when you read, you would find out that there are questions raised. So let's get into it. Mahama Ayariga, of course, is Member of Parliament for Boku Central, and he has thrown his weight behind the decision by the EC to adopt the Ghana card as the sole identification document for voter registration ahead of the 2024 elections. But the question is that exactly what happened? So even in the story, it says, Mr. Ayariga indicated using the Ghana card to vote will be more prudent. He pointed out that, quote, the law doesn't say we cannot change it, that is the card used to vote. Now, we're talking about the voter's ID card. We can change it to say if you have a Ghana card, the Electoral Commission should recognize that for the purposes of voting, because the same information that you are going to give to get a Ghana card is the same information that the Electoral Commission would be asking for. As we speak, I personally don't have a problem with saying if you have a Ghana card, just go to the polling station and show it to the EC and vote. So what he's basically saying here is we can use an interlocking system, not necessarily saying that you have to use the Ghana card. But in essence, even on voting day, if you have the Ghana card, which takes your biometrics and all other details, and you have the voter's ID, which does same, people should be allowed. But he makes some interesting points in addition. This is on page 6. Why should I struggle to get a Ghana card and after that go and struggle to get a voter ID card? That brings to question the issue of duplication or replication of cards. So you have to get this card, you pick my biometrics. SNIT card, you pick my biometrics. That card, you pick my biometrics. So he's talking about ease. And then he says, they cannot insist that I must get a Ghana card before I come and get a voter identity card. I don't think that is constitutionally right. So I feel that sometimes, yes, the captioning of the story, but the essence of what he said, there's a bit of a divergence. Your quick thoughts. So I mean, that adds to the conversation. Different aspects we can look at. For me, I will say, as we integrate everybody into the system, fair is fair. But don't create a system where some people are on the fringes, are not integrated, and you want to use that system. You'll end up disenfranchising people, and that can only destabilize the country. So let's do the right thing. Only when you've got a system where everybody is involved, and maybe the only person who isn't there is the person who has refused to be there, then you can get into some of this. I don't know what your thoughts are quickly on that.
My thoughts are same. I believe that everybody has a right to vote. If I go to vote, it is my choice to go to vote. But you don't disenfranchise me by saying that you need this to be able to vote. And like he's saying, and I question all the time because it's a lot of money in producing cards and going through all the systems all the time, because we need to streamline what we want as a people. So if in the future we decide that it's only the Ghana card that you need to vote with, make sure that the system is such that everybody by the time you're ready to vote has a Ghana card. If people do not have the Ghana card, you can't disenfranchise them because they have voter ID cards. And so we should look at the system very well. And we should hasten slowly. It is a process. It is not an event, getting a card and using it in an instance, because over the years, we have not gotten everything on one card the way we are doing now.
Right.
And we have not, even in the past, we have not incorporated everybody the way we have to. And so it's still a process and it will be gradual. We can't hurry it. So let's take our time and do it properly.
Right.
And look at the medium-term, probably deadline. Say that by 2025, 2026, whatever, everybody would have a Ghana card. And so if a child is born today, the person when is registered gets a card. You know, so as the person is growing, then you're upgrading the card as the person goes. And if we have that kind of system, then we won't be complaining. But as it is now, I don't see it being feasible that only the Ghana card can be used for voters' ID.
Let's wrap with a few stories, Liz. So from the Daily Guide, I'll add these two. No reshuffle, that's according to President Akufo-Addo. And he has said, just in summary, that he's not going to have any reshuffle. No one is going to force his hand. And that, guess what? It is an attempt by the NDC to destabilize the system by getting him to move around his ministers. And there's also the story of government strongly criticizing Standard & Poor's for its decision to downgrade Ghana's economy. You know, there's been a recent downgrade from B- to CCC+ with a negative outlook. My interest there, my curiosity there has to do with the fact that when it inures to any government's benefit, whether the NDC or the MPP, they embrace it and say, yes, this is a reflection of, you know, the true state of the economy. But when it goes against what they want, then it is, nah, they are not getting it right. And they should have, you know, looking at the measures we've put in place, they should have considered those and all of that. Interesting times. And maybe you can just add this story. ECG identifies more than 1,000 illegal connections in Legon district. That's how we'll end the conversation. These three. So no reshuffle, the criticism of Standard & Poor's, and illegal connections. Liz.
With a reshuffle, well, it is the president's prerogative, but I wonder if it's only because the NDC is calling for a reshuffle that he's refusing to budge, because I believe that there should be a system that should, I'm trying to choose the right words, but a system that should be able to tell you the ministers who are doing well and the ministers who are not doing well. And you should be able to tell from the tempo of the people, the ministers that they appreciate and the ministers that they don't appreciate. And I don't think it's just an NDC thing. Looking at it across board, I think that there are some ministers that you hardly hear of but are working hard. There are others that you hear of all the time but are doing practically nothing. The systems that we are in, if you take ministry by ministry, are we getting above 80% efficiency? If we are not, then why are you keeping the person there? So I believe that there should be a system by which the ministers are graded to see if they're really making an impact or not. But it's the president's prerogative. They are his representatives. So if he's satisfied with what they're doing, so be it. If he thinks that he won't listen to the people's call, that's his choice.
Right.
And I think I'll leave it there. It's his choice. So, well, only he knows the reasons why he won't listen to anybody and he won't reshuffle. Maybe he thinks that his ministers are doing fantastically well, so they remain in position. SMP. The downgrade. actually, I think that the downgrade has a lot more to do with us being able to service our loans and bring ourselves up from the doldrums. And in the near future, it doesn't look that bright. We have loads of loans that we have taken. We are borrowing to pay loans. And unfortunately, we are not investing enough into our productive sectors that would help us come out of the doldrums as an economy. In the near future, I don't see us rising as high as we want to. It will get better with time if we pay attention to the proper areas, if we put our priorities right.
Right.
There's a lot of infrastructural development going on, but still, our imports are very high, and it takes a lot of money to do those imports. And that is what is costing us so much. We've moved away from paying attention to what we produce. And so our production levels are very low. Everything is imported. I mean, you want to go get stuff and you realize that what is in Ghana or what is produced in Ghana hardly gets patronized.
And that really brings to mind a recent list by Steve Manteau concerning some of the things Ghana should be doing to resuscitate our economy. But this is where we're going to hang it all up. Thank you so much, Liz, for joining the conversation. Very colorful outfit this morning. How do you do it? You always do something. I think I'll reach you off air and find out what your secret is, so I can also tap into it. Okay. But do have a wonderful day, Liz.
Thank you. Also, bless you.
Great. Time now for us to head right into sports, and definitely one thing we're going to be talking about: Ashanti Gold in the Ghana Premier League and its replacement. We'll be telling you about Tamale City and more. Muftau Nabila Abdullahi up next with sports. Well, thank you very much for staying with us. We delve into the big stories this morning, starting with that situation to do with premix fuel and how some cartels supposedly are hoarding these and reselling them at exorbitant, cutthroat prices. But how did we get here? And what can we do about the situation? Well, joining us for the conversation, Nana Brokwa Asari. He is the Administrator, National Premix Secretariat. We also have Jojo Solomon, Acting President of the Ghana National Canoe Fisherman Council. Both of these gentlemen join the conversation. Nana, Jojo, a very good morning to you. In fact, I'll come into the studio first. Nana, a very good morning to you.
A very good morning to you as well.
Okay. We'll be joined by Jojo shortly as well, as and when we have him. Jojo, can you hear me?
I can hear you loud and clear.
Great. Good to have you join the conversation. But I'll start with Nana in the studio. You've seen the latest documentary we've put out. What is your reflection on it?
Good morning to you and good morning to all your viewers once again. I must commend Joy FM, Joy TV for this wonderful expose. Government has been on this issue for the longest of time. Yes, we see the media as partners in trying to curtail this menace that we find in our system. So a very good job to Joy FM. These are things that the Secretariat is aware of. These are things that government is aware of. These are things that government is consciously working towards so we can solve the problem.
You say it's something you're aware of, it's something you're working toward. What exactly have you done about this? This is not the first time we're hearing about such an incident. In fact, throughout this period, the tenure of this administration, and even before, we've heard of such incidents. So when you say government is working on the situation, I'd like to know what exactly has been done.
All right, so we've come a long way with regards to the distribution and sale of premix fuel to fisher folks. In the past, we used to have lots and lots of issues. this administration has done very well to reduce some of these incidences that we are talking about. Not too long ago, you may recall that tanker union drivers were on strike. And one of the reasons for the strike was this electronic seal that NPA has introduced. As I speak to you now, MMDCs have also been integrated with regards to the sale and distribution of premixed fuel. We have platforms where we publish list of landing beaches receiving fuel, etc. But by way of education, I would like to state emphatically that premixed fuel is highly subsidized by government. A gallon of premixed fuel is now on about 10 cedis, 40 pesos. Ordinarily, that should be costing about 50 cedis. So the subsidy gap or the range induces people to indulge in such illegalities because there's so much profit that people can get out of this business. So whilst government is trying very hard to subsidize premixed fuel for fishermen, others, including, in quotes, some of the fishermen themselves, are also trying to make money at the back of government. That is why I'm sure as our conversation progresses, we'll talk about what government is doing. Currently, we've done a lot of education. We are doing a lot of enforcement. But we believe the only way and the only solution to this problem is the use of technology. The Vice President, His Excellency, Dr. Mahmoud Bawumia, has charged the ministry to see how we can fully automate these processes, which we are working at.
So you're telling me that the price differential between the actual cost of the product, 10 cedis, and what it should have been, 50 cedis, is about 40 cedis?
Yes.
Right. And you're also telling me that you know some fishermen themselves also try to take advantage of the situation. But that would be expected, right? So what has been done to, close this loophole?
All right. So if you look at the composition of the landing beach committees, government realizes that it's high time fishermen take control of what happens at the landing beach. So if you go to a landing beach, a 7-member landing beach, you have the chief fisherman as the chairman of the landing beach committee. If you read our LI 2233, section 22, it clearly spells out who and who should be, or the composition of the landing beach. So you have the chief fisherman, you have the chief rep of the chief monger, you have a rep of the canoe owner, you have a rep from the DC, etc. So we expect that this committee would be honest enough to sell fuel to fisher folks because they control or manage the affairs of these landing beaches.
You expect them to be honest enough to do that? It's a human institution. When there are loopholes, these things happen.
So what we expect is for them to sell the fuel to their fellow fishermen. But unfortunately, we realize that on lots of occasions, you realize that most of these landing beach committee members connive with people who are not fishermen and then sell premix to them. Let me also state that premix has other uses other than putting it in your outboard motor, because any two-stroke engine is able to take the premix fuel. So you find chainsaw operators who should be buying fuel at the full cost, trying to buy premix fuel. You find people who are into agriculture, using it for irrigation.
There are different uses, like you find people, and all of them will feed into this. But again, that is to be expected. The chainsaw, I mean, in this latest documentary, we talk about saying, chainsaw operators trying to access it and all of that. But my question is, what measures? Because initially you spoke to me about the fact that you had reduced, the incidence of premixed fuel being diverted, being hoarded, and being resold at exorbitant prices. So if I asked you, by how much exactly can you quantify and say you've reduced this? What would you say?
All right. So to begin with, previous.
Do you have any, before you even go, I don't want you to hang yourself. All right. Do you have any statistics on that?
I may not be able to give you figures to that, but by far and large, like I said previously, we didn't even have tracking devices on these tankers. So you could have fuel loaded from Tor, and then it ends up somewhere in Fisherman, etc. All of these things have become a thing of the past. But
so how exactly have you done that? Because of the tracking device.
Because of the tracking device. But currently, what happens is that after fuel is dislodged into the tanks, we don't have sensors and monitors in these tanks. So there are instances where after fuel is dislodged in the tanks, fishermen siphon the fuel again and then go and sell. It's very difficult to monitor because you don't have sensors in these tanks. That is why the subject now comes with automation, where we want to modernize these landing beach sites, where it's going to be like mini filling stations like we have it, where we can have sensors in the tanks and we can have a back-end monitoring system in our office to ensure we see the levels at each landing beach. Until that is done, because it's a human institution, people will definitely find loopholes. The law is very clear. If you look at Section 28, it talks about people who hoard premix for their punitive measures. As I speak to you now, we have cases in court. People have been prosecuted. We've done a lot of education.
How many have been
realized
prosecuted?
That this year we have 3 cases that have been prosecuted.
3 cases of prosecution.
If you look at the law, it talks about 2 years imprisonment, fines, and all of that. But if you ask me personally, I even think some of these sanctions are not even too severe. So people would always want to circumvent the law and do their own thing. So the education is going on, the enforcement is going on. We are collaborating with the law enforcement agencies, the police, the marine police, etc. But we want to make it difficult for the act itself to happen. If the act doesn't happen, then we don't even have to even worry ourselves and spend money to enforce the law. Because enforcing the law can be very, very expensive. We have over 300 landing beaches across the country. Like I said, the devices are not monitored. We don't have devices in there which can know the level. So at night, at dawn, if fishermen connive, they can easily go and siphon. So it's sometimes very difficult to monitor these things. That is why the ministry, led by Honorable Howard Kumsin, is pushing very hard to ensure that we can pull through with this automation. I can tell you on authority that plans are fully far advanced to make sure that this thing happens.
So 2 quick things before I go to Jojo. Partly, or to a large extent, you are blaming the fishermen themselves. I just want you to clarify that.
It's a collective. I wouldn't apportion the blame to only the fishermen. It could be the fishermen.
That's why I said partly. So you are partly blaming the fishermen themselves for doing this.
They are part to be blamed.
The fisher folk, you're blaming them.
Exactly.
Okay. The other bit is, in terms of the prosecutions, those you say, yes, have been prosecuted. Have there been any convictions?
Yes, we've had.
How many of these 3 this year?
This year, just 1. Last year, we had 3 people who were convicted. Yeah.
Looking at the numbers and looking at the stories that have filtered in over the years and what it appears to be, this is like a cartel. It's like a mafia, system that is being run across the country.
Mm-hmm.
How do you feel about 3 prosecutions in a year with 1 conviction, or 3 the previous year? It doesn't appear to me, from where I sit, to be. It appears to be even less than a drop in a bucket.
I think there are several punitive measures that the ministry employs in dealing with some of these situations. Even this year alone, we've had several cases where we have to suspend fuel to an entire district because premise fuel has been illegally sold. It's happened. I think this year we had the whole Ikumfi district was suspended. We had cases in Adan where we suspended a whole landing beach. So we are using different tactics in sanctioning this fishermen. And I must confess that some of these punitive measures are even more severe than the convictions, because the fishermen feel it themselves. What we want to do is to let the fishermen themselves volunteer and give us information. That also brings the subject of the use of premix fuel to perpetuate the illegal acts of light fishing. Light fishing is very illegal. You find fishermen who, instead of just buying premix fuel to power their outboard motors, they buy premix fuel and also put it in their generators to engage in some of these illegalities. We've had instances where a whole district will have to be penalized, and that is what we are doing. As I speak to you now, it was just last week that we lifted a ban on Ikumfi district. For 3 months, fuel didn't go to Ikumfi because we realized that if you are using this fuel for an illegality, that should mean that you don't need fuel. It happened at Shama this year, like I said, in Fansiman district. So there are several tactics that we are employing to ensure that at least we clean up the system. But like I said, ultimately, we want to make sure some of these things don't happen, and that is why the subject of automation.
My final bit to you for now, it has to do with the political twist to this entire menace that we are fighting. We've had people on record say, look, I've served political party A, in this case the MPP, and this is their way. I mean, I've not been given any role. This is their way of compensating me. I'm sure you've seen the videos, among others. How are you addressing the political end to the conversation? Because then you move away from the fisher folk. These are people who aren't even fisher folk. Yet they're getting access to it, they're hoarding it and reselling it for hundreds of CDs, some as much as 170 CDs and others. Now, if you compare that to even what you say to be the actual price of the product, let's say 50 CDs and the subsidy of 40 CDs, this is almost more than three times the actual cost. And some fisher folk across the country are being forced to buy at those prices. Central region, Volta region, at least per our latest documentary. How are you dealing with the political end to this?
I think that's a very erroneous impression.
Erroneous in which sense?
Let me break it down. So the National Premix 4 Committee adheres strictly to the LI 2233. I just told you how landing beaches are composed. If you read section 22, it says that the National Premix 4 Committee, in consultation with the District Assembly, shall compose a landing beach committee. It states clearly that the chief fisherman of the community should be the chairperson. So there's no way anybody can go around and circumvent the law and bring a political figure to be the chief fisherman. Chief fishermen are appointed by the communities themselves, and you can go through all the communities.
How about beyond these groupings?
Exactly.
You say that technically, Nana, it gets to them.
Yeah.
And whatever distribution takes place from there.
Yeah.
But you do admit that even within these ranks, there are political elements. You cannot say that, these people are devoid of any political affiliations.
Yeah.
And that is where the trouble comes in, because these are people with political colors. And in the past, if you recall, it has also been said that even sometimes the distributions in terms of which person is the key person in these groupings, sometimes you look at who belongs to which political party. I don't want to get into that. But you cannot run away from the fact that there are political considerations, that there are people with political colorations, and that it could impact whatever distribution happens, whether to Assemblyman A or Assemblywoman B, or to whoever is a political party favorite. That's what I'm asking you.
All right, so that is why I was trying to explain to you that if you adhere strictly to what is in the LI,
the point is they are not adhering strictly to what is in the LI.
There's a high possibility to reduce these political elements. For example, it talks about a fish monger rep. Unfortunately, we live in a very polarized country where one may either belong to Party A or Party B. So in the event that somebody is appointed to serve on the committee as a fishmonger rep, that person may, of course, be a fishmonger rep, but because that person belongs to this party, they say, okay, it's politicized. But, of course, if the chairman or the chief fishermen themselves will stand their grounds, there are instances where you find chief fishermen saying that, okay, a party chairman says, I should come for 20 drums, I should come for 10 drums. We always tell them to stand to their grounds. If you are standing for what is right, you should be able to defend it fearlessly. And these are instances we call on them to report such incidences to the Secretariat so that we can deal with it. Because you are the chairperson or you are the chairman. So if there's any political interference, you have to stand your grounds and make sure the right thing is done.
If there's any political interference, maybe what you may not be seeing is if there's any political interference and the person himself or herself is benefiting, maybe they just might sustain that interference. But you hold on. Let me bring in Jojo, who is president of the Canoe Fishermen's Association. Jojo, thank you for staying patiently on the line. I want to find out from you, the picture as painted by Nana, is it reflective of what you know, or is there a different picture that you see? What is your reality, Jojo?
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yes, I've worked with Nana on the Premix Committee for 4 years, and everything he's saying there is right, but there's more to it than just being right. More to it, yes, we are all aware that this is what the LI says. This is what the Premix Committee and the Premix Secretariat, under the LI 2233 are supposed to do. This is our mandate. But the problem is that it is one thing having the terms of reference to work with, and another thing actually dealing with the situation on the ground. Whether we like it or not. For some years now, at least for almost 15 to 20 years now, premix fuel has been politicized, whether we like it or not. There is no landing beach committee that will allow the opposition party member to be on. The fishermen themselves will even not allow that this man is an MPP man, this man is an NDC man. So there's no right for him to be on the committee. When the NDC was in power, no MPP person, and then I'm putting this on record, no MPP person was allowed to serve on the landing beach committees.
So let me get that clearly, Jojo. You're saying that there is a serious political twist to this entire enterprise of premixed fuel and who gets access to it, even at your level. And you are saying here on record that when the NDC was in power, no member of the MPP was on that committee. Is that what you're saying?
No, that's what I'm saying.
Right.
And currently, no NDC person is allowed to serve on the premixed committee. It has been the status quo. We know the committee, the secretariat is confronted with it. Now we have a minister who has the political will to change the discourse. Sometimes I sit back and look at her frustration and you realize that, whatever she's trying to do, yes, but cannot be sustainable.
You're referring to the Minister for Fisheries, Mavis Hawakumsi.
Exactly.
Right.
Sometimes you personally go to the landing beach to make sure to sell the premixed fuel to the actual recipients, the fishermen themselves. She goes to Volta region, she does the same thing. Recently, when we reopened the sea, at Kumfi, she went there to do the same. You understand? I can see her frustration. But it is a system that is failing. We must operate within the confines of a system, the LI 2233. You understand? So for me, I believe that the only game changer is the automation. That is the only way out. Otherwise, like you rightly said, human elements, money, cartel, there's no way. We've been fighting this over the years and we're not getting any results. And in actual fact, the administration and then the sale of premix itself is not done in the offices. I've attended meetings for 4 years. And I'm telling you on authority that you don't sit in the office, make laws and think that the laws work. The issues are on the ground. Look at what Joy FM has brought to bear on the Ghanaian populace. Therefore, it means that the Kanka itself is operational. It is on the ground. So you may sit in the office thinking that the LI 2233 is the tool that should work. But it is one thing, the tool that should work, another thing, whether it is working.
So tell me, Jojo, is that a point that Nana Brokwa and his team is missing? Because it appears, or they are missing, it appears he's spoken extensively about the LI 2233 and it stipulates this, it stipulates that. But basically what you're saying is that the point, the reality on the ground is not necessarily same. So is there that disconnect between what the law says, what Nana knows, and what is being implemented as a fact on the ground?
Yeah, if I listen to Nana clearly, he initially said that, yes, the Premise Secretariat, the Premise Committee, is aware of all these things that Joy FM has brought to bear. All these, you understand? So clearly, he knows that there's something going on. You understand? But
you say he knows that there's nothing going on. Basically, there's not much being done. Is that what he's suggesting?
He knows that these cartels are operating seriously on the ground.
Right.
It is for the chief fisherman to stand his grounds. It's another thing, a cartel. You can't expect that, I'm the chairman. Even because of the politicization, you realize that there's a chief fisherman who has different party colors. He's supposed to be the chairman. But because his party is not in power, he does not have what it takes he doesn't even have the moral right to even speak up. These are some of the frustrations. And it has been our frustration when I was on the board, a committee member, and Nana knows about it. That's why initially Nana said, yes, we are aware of all these things. And pragmatic measures are being taken. But for me, the only pragmatic measure is the automation, where people will not come in the name of party, in the name of protocol, in the name of your position in the community to access the premix and resell to the actual recipient. That is the problem. That is our frustration.
The political element you speak of, and you've painted a very clear picture, and as someone in the thick of things, it is even more stark, this reality that you paint. So when the NDC is in power, as far as this situation is concerned, there'll be no MPP members on that committee. And it's a political game. When the MPP is in power, no member of the NDC can be found there. Like you're saying, even when a chief fisherman is from the opposition party, he doesn't even have the right to speak. He doesn't have that temerity. So
there because
how much of a problem is the political element in this entire situation? How much of a problem is it, the role of politics?
All the problem. It is all the problem. You watch the Joy FM documentary very well. Yes, it is our party. Our party is in power. Even if you channel outboard voters to the assemblies, most of them end up in the hands of party people who are not fishermen. This is the discourse. This is the discourse. So for me, I believe that the only game changer, and I re-emphasize, is the digitalization of the product, where if you do not have the card to access the fuel, that's it. That's it. I'm even praying that the cartel will not find another way around to circumvent even this automation.
Well, I mean, wherever across the world, criminals always look for loopholes. Once you have loopholes, they will feed into them. But that brings me then to my next question, because Nana also laid a good portion of the blame at your doorstep as fisherfolk. Okay, so tell me, how much of a contribution do you feel your own membership, the Canoe fishermen, among others, the Fishermen's Councils, also contribute to this problem? Is it fair to lay quite a portion of the blame at your doorstep?
Certainly, it is fair. It is fair because we are involved in, well, we are supposed, quote unquote, to be involved in the distribution and sale of the premixed fuel. And definitely, like I said, all those who are involved are supposed to be politically connected, whether we like it or not. So it still comes back to where the problem is coming from.
When you say, just expatiate, explain a bit for me. When you say politically connected, how much connection do you need? What must you do to be this politically connected to feed into the system?
Like I said initially, that even the fishermen themselves will not allow anybody from the opposition party to be on the landing beach committee.
That precisely is my concern. So what must you be? Must you be a card-bearing member of the party? Must you hold some position in the party? What is it?
It is a small community, and everybody knows everybody. And therefore, if anybody who comes out of the opposition party will quickly be stampeded by the community or the party people within the community that you are not part of us, so you cannot be on the board. It's as simple as that. But we sit in the office. Nana Brocker sits in his office, and then, he sensitizes and then educates the landing beach committees that this is the LI 2233. This is the way it should go. This is how we should do it. You understand? And the minister, at every point, when she has the opportunity, re-emphasizes this point. But it's one thing re-emphasizing the point. Another thing, whether the points are being taken, and they will tell you clearly that the party gives birth to even the president. And therefore, the party is more powerful than. So until we depoliticize this industry, you understand? And the minister is doing everything possible. In a person that I sit back and then I pity her. You see that clearly she's so frustrated. You understand? And she would sanction a whole community, a whole district. Don't give them premixed fuel because this is what they are doing. They are diverting. They are doing this. You understand? But they are all not sustainable because then you get the MCs within the district to come in. You get the chiefs within this, and then she will have to give up. So for me, I believe that if the automation or the automation is the ultimate, let us go for it as quickly as possible. For me, that is where, but I had the opportunity to be in the Jubilee House during President Mahama's time, and I told him, and put this on record, I told him that there's a cartel operating within the premix sector, and therefore Western region and Central region are key. He should investigate. Nothing was done about it. Now we are here, so it has become the status quo, whether we like it or not. LI 2233 is sitting down in the comfort of the office, and then LI 22310 is also operating for the cartels, whether we like it or not. This is what is happening. This is what is pertaining on the ground. Otherwise, Joy FM would not have captured all these things. And they are live on video. So what are we saying? It's going on. It's happening. And it is our frustration as well.
So some of these fisher folk, let me come to you, Nana, explain in the last few months, sometime back in April, they were explaining that, like you said, premix from government costs them anything between 7 and 10 cedis. What should have gone for about 50 cedis per gallon. Then they have to add the cost of engine oil, which is about 100 cedis. And that means that if you required 140 of these gallons for a trip, what it would mean was that you would be expending about 7,000 cedis. That was in April. The dynamics have changed as of this time. But the cost of fishing now, the fishermen say, is drowning them. Because, look, if they have to come up with these sums of money just for a trip, they go and the little that they catch, they come and sell at inflated prices because no one does business to incur losses. They are barely breaking even. It's affecting the industry, and we already know all the different shades of problems that we have when it comes to fishing in this country. People using pair trawlers, foreigners getting into our waters and fishing, because the fact is that we are also not able to man our territorial waters in the best ways possible, not in the ways that other countries with better naval services and equipment would be able to do. We don't have that. So already we are bleeding from that angle. And from our fisher folk, with the little that is available to us, they are also now selling at cutthroat prices. When was the last time you went out there, and I don't know whether you ever eat outside? Do you buy fish like with rice and wache and stuff? Do you buy that?
I do.
Have you seen any changes in prices?
In the price of fish?
Right.
Of course, there are several factors that drive prices on the market, fuel prices, etc. So definitely, global problems will definitely have an effect on prices.
Global problems like what?
What is happening globally? Of course, the suits you bought, maybe if you bought the suits last year, probably it may not be the same price. So the same factor is affecting the price of transportation. I believe last year you were buying fuel for a certain price. Now it's gone up. So these are problems that may affect.
While we can talk about the global situation, we must also look at the specific situation of premix fuel, which we're discussing. And I can tell you for a fact that whether it's cassava fish or even some very mobrowa fish that I used to buy some time ago for maybe 4 or 5 cedis. The other day I was in shock. I went to my usual gobe joint. It's pretty close to where we are. It's just around the corner. And bought a little beans, a little rice. I like the mix. The fish they gave me, the gentleman put it in, and I thought that was the regular 4 cedi fish.
All right.
He told me it was 10 cedis. I was in shock. And some of the people around shared in my lamentation while even laughing at me, because it appeared I wasn't on top of the prices, so to speak. That is the reality. How are you dealing with that end of the conversation? How do we deal with it? Because obviously the prices of
things have gone high.
It's terrible.
I can understand, and I can also share with your sentiment. Of course, but you should also have or take cognizance of the fact that you would have been even buying it much more, if not for some of the interventions government is putting in place.
Like
for example, the subsidy. We talk about subsidizing outbound motors, etc. So definitely things are becoming expensive, I understand, but it would have been much more expensive if some of these interventions were not in place. So let's hope for the best. If you look at the global trend of fishing now, scientists are forecasting that our fishery stocks in the ocean are declining. You quite recall that we just came out of close season. So there are several factors driving the price of fish on the world market. We talk about these IUUs, people using light fishing, people using DDT to fish, etc. So I think difficult situations also demand more stringent measures. Not too long ago, the EU nearly sanctioned Ghana with a yellow card because of some of these illegal practices. That is why the minister herself is making sure that she puts her foot down. It was very difficult to take the decision to go on a close season, particularly this year, because fishermen were complaining of situation or circumstances happening. But the ministry had to stamp its feet down, and we all saw the benefits of the close season.
It's important that we have this discussion because some 2 million people are involved in the fishing business in Ghana. If I do some quick mathematics, that would be somewhere around 7.5, 8% of the population. This means this is not an industry we can joke with. Yeah. And when you look at our staples, our diets across the country, we consume a lot of fish. Yeah. So tell me, with all these cliques in quotes, dotted across the country, having access on a political level, because like Jojo Solomon has painted, it's largely political. If you are not even in the ruling administration, if you do not belong, you will not have access. I think that point has been made very clearly. So how are you dealing with this clique system? Because you can tell me all the bit about, oh, the chairperson of this and the member of that and the Canoe Fisherman. But it appears even for all of those roles, you must be politically connected to be on that board. How possibly are you going to deal with that?
Yeah, so like I rightly said, it's a collective effort. The Secretariat has its role to play. The law enforcement agencies have their role to play. The media, like you're doing, also have your role to play. The fishermen themselves, I'm happy Jojo alluded to the fact that the fishermen themselves are even partly to be blamed. Just last week, he's on the line and you can ask him. He even led the arrest of some of their subgroup members trying to divert fuel from one place to the other. He himself is on the line and you can ask him and he'll confirm the story. A fisherman, well-known, who is an executive, was indulging in this illegality. So a lot of times...
And that's the point I'm making.
A lot of times you are quick to blame government, you are quick to blame our leaders, but it's a collective responsibility. That is why the ministry is also doing its part. Like he said, the game changer will be the automation. We are far advanced, the contract has been awarded. Come by end of August, we are having the first 50, which is going to be installed. So I'm happy he's admitted that the game changer, or what can change the funds of this cartel and this menace and this clique, will be the automation, where people will have unique cards. It's only the Canoe owners who have cards, so that we can wipe out all of these middlemen and people who buy and sell at exorbitant prices, so that we can even put a capping system. You know, nowhere in the world have I seen a subsidized product in perpetuity. Today, anybody goes to the landing beach, and if you have money, you buy as much as you can, you put it in your room, you cut yourself, and then you sell it at exorbitant prices. It's sad, but we are working towards it. And I'm happy, like you said, the game changer is the automation. And I'm happy the ministry is far advanced with regards to this project. By August, we'll have the first 50. And going forward, I think we can close some of these loopholes that we have in the system.
Right, so automation has been on the board for a while. I remember in June, the sector minister, Mavis Hawakumsin, was speaking about how she could even sit in her office and track, pre-mixed fuel. Yeah. And the fact that even if the person who was conveying this siphoned a bit, she would know. But obviously, that system has become, in some sense, redundant, because we need further automation to be done to make it more relevant. Because if you track it to a point, and then, like you said, it's dislodged into another vessel, and then the siphoning happens, it's cost 90, zero. Yeah. So what would you say, gentlemen, as we get ready to wind down on the conversation? Maybe instead of coming to you, I'll go to Jojo first, so we can wind down on the conversation. We've had quite a discussion. It is clear, Jojo, that there is the political twist to the conversation, which is crucial. Then there is the issue to do with you, the fisher folk yourselves, and the role you play in this entire dynamic. And of course, then there are the other broader issues that are simmering underneath. So for you, Jojo, what is the way forward? How do we, apart from automation, which I do not know, maybe, Nana, do you know how quickly we'll get the automation?
Oh, like I said rightly, by the end of August, we are having the first 50. The contract has been awarded. It's gone through all the process, done procurement, PPE, everything. So I think by end of August, like I said, we're getting the first 50.
Just interested, was it a competitive bidding?
It was. As the mother ministry, we are an agency under the Ministry of Fisheries and Aquaculture Development. So the mother ministry took the lead role.
So you mean the Ministry for Fisheries and Aquaculture?
The Ministry for Fisheries and Aquaculture. But I know my minister and her team will definitely make sure they exhaust the right procedure to make sure things are done correctly.
So it wasn't so sourced?
I can't speak to the facts now, but I know definitely that the right thing was done.
The right thing was done?
Exactly.
Yeah. You don't know the details, but you know the right thing was done?
Exactly, yes.
How can you know the right thing was done when you don't have the details?
Oh, like I said, this automation process has been lingering for the longest of time. In fact, we've been at it, Jojo would attest to the fact that we even started when he was on board. It's been there for like 3 years. And the stall in making sure this thing comes on board was because we wanted to make sure we exhaust every line item to make sure that at least it goes through the right procedures. So at the end of the day, we have value for money as well.
So over to you, Jojo. What's the way forward? You've mentioned automation. Yes, we've heard that. But what is the way forward? What would you like to see when the automation starts? And beyond that, in dealing with the political issues, how do we go about it?
Thank you so much. Before I even speak to this question, I would also want you to know that from where the information reaching us, the devices planted on the fuel tankers so that they can be tracked to the final destination are not even foolproof. Sometimes the tanker will end up in, let's say, Osu, but meanwhile the device will indicate that the tanker is in Axim. Because it is just a device, and so somebody carries it in his pocket, goes to Axim, MPA will track it, that it's gotten to Axim, but meanwhile the fuel is at Osu.
Are you suggesting that there's also a mechanism, of where people can take off the tracking devices from the tankers or delivery vessels, if you like, and then play games with the system?
Exactly. You understand? So like I said, the only way out is the automation. And I am only trusting that this cartel will put everything to rest and will not also go and look for other ways round about it.
Jojo, if they are making money out of the situation, they definitely will look for other ways.
Well, then maybe we will address it as and when. But for me, I believe that right now, after so, like Nana Abraka rightly said, for over 3 years, we've been deliberating and brainstorming on how to, curb this menace. It's a cartel. It's not easy. It is a cartel. It is not easy. You understand? And we're all so frustrated. The fishermen are always crying. You understand? But one thing that some of these political parties fail to acknowledge is that we are not even 2 million, 3 million, 10% of the population. And they are all of voting age. And therefore, if it comes to votes, if it is votes that they are concerned about, then they should handle this industry, this sector, with all the respect and decorum that we need. Because fishermen can decide that today you are down and out. Today you are here and you will be here forever. You understand? So please, let us treat this industry with the kind of respect and decorum that we will require. And I believe that everything will be fine.
All right. Jojo, thank you for that final submission. Let me come to Nana Abraka in the studio. How do you react? So he's just painted another picture where people even are able to detach the tracking device from whatever vessel is delivering the premix fuel. And so you may think, like how Akumsin has been saying, you are sitting in your office and thinking it's an Axim, it's actually in Osu, and there's siphoning going on. Are you aware of that as well?
Like he rightly said, people are always trying to think of ways to also, let me use the word again, circumvent the system. As I speak to you now, we are collaborating with MPA. Not too long ago, and I'm quoting from your website, last week, we all know that tanker drivers were on strike, and one of the reasons for the strike was some of these new introductions that we've brought. And it says that with the introduction of seals and tracking devices on the petroleum, the tanker drivers said they are suffering from some unfair treatment by the authorities. These unfair treatments come in the form of wrong accusations of tampering with seals and punishing of a whole group of drivers alleged. This is just last week from your website, So these are
that has to do with the LPG situation
and the premix as well, not the LPG alone. In fact, this is more with the premix.
Right.
Yes. So these are new introductions. These are new reforms. Reforms, you don't achieve results overnight. It takes time for people to get used to it.
How long has this been in force?
It's been like over close to 2 years now. And it's really...
So after 2 years, we're still
having challenges. So this measure, for example, is clamping down on a lot of these irregularities that are happening. But like I said rightly, it doesn't end there. When the fuel is dislodged into the tanks, there are other circumstances that can happen to it. So this is just one measure. But I believe to be able to solve the problem holistically, we must tie all the loose ends. That is why I mentioned that everybody has a role to play. Even the fishermen themselves have a role to play. Let's assume that we are done with this automation and we give cards to these fishermen, and you have your card and you buy your premix. Some fishermen may even decide that after having their cards and fully automated and everything, they may still want to go and sell the premix to someone and decide not to go for fishing. That instance, that scenario is also there. So we all have to tie and make sure we play a role to be able to solve this problem. The problem doesn't lie on the doorstep of only the ministry. It doesn't lie on the doorstep of only the president. It lies amongst all of us. Like I said rightly, just last week, Jojo himself, he's online, you can ask him. He led us to arrest some members who are executives, who are fishermen, well-known, who are trying to divert premix fuel. So we all have a role to play. We must play that role very well in order to make sure the fisheries sector thrives.
Well, this is where we'll have to hang this conversation. But thank you very much, gentlemen, for joining. Jojo Solomon, Acting President, Ghana National Canoe Fishermen Council. We also had Nana Brokwa in the studio joining us from the technical point, that is Administrator of the National Premix Secretariat. I can only wish you the very best as we try to tackle this menace.
Thank you very much.
Okay, doke. So this is the first leg of our big stories. But right before we get into the second one, right before we take a break, how's it? That's hello. How about treating your family to a summer holiday in South Africa? Come journey to South Africa for a good time in our beautiful country. Get to know the locals and our languages. If you're looking to let your hair down, relax, or you're just in the mood for some fun, family-friendly adventures, South Africa has got everything you need. This summer, Wazanila. Come this side and experience a holiday worth talking about. On that note, we take a break. When we return, we'll be talking about Standard & Poor's, the recent downgrade of our economic outlook from B- to CCC plus with a negative outlook, what that really means, and how government is trying hard to counter that. Stay. Thank you for staying with us. It's the second leg of our conversation, and we're talking the hard facts and figures now when it comes to our economy. It's also about the recent downgrade by Standard & Poor's, and government feels that was a poor decision, that on the back of the measures that it has been implementing, Standard & Poor's should have taken stock of those and maintained our economic outlook's rating. But what exactly happened, and does government have a point? We'll be having a discussion on that in the studio with our guests who will be joining us for this all-important conversation. But let me say a very good morning to Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah.
Hi, good morning. How are you?
Finally, you show face. You've been hiding.
It's good to be here, yeah. Good.
What briefly would be your reaction to this? They've come out, like we were saying yesterday, we've had all of them downgrading us over time.
Yes.
And stiff opposition to this one as well.
I was expecting this response from government. I mean...
You were expecting it?
Oh, of course. But government has always... I don't want to use the word defensive, but has always found a way to say it's not what it is as is being put out by these agencies. And the Moody's ratings, we know what Kojo Nkrumah said about that. So I'm not surprised that government has tried to put up a defense, has tried to say maybe if you had considered A, B, C, you wouldn't have arrived at this conclusion. So let's just furnish you with the details of what government has been saying in response to this latest rating. So it says, in arriving at their decision, the credit rating agency considered the lingering effects of the COVID-19 pandemic and the severe global shock of the Russian invasion of Ukraine on Ghana and the consequent fiscal and external imbalances, elevated gross financing needs in the face of international capital market, the limited commercial financing options, and the credible steps taken by government to fast-track fiscal consolidation and the passage of key revenue bills. Now, so this is where we get to government's reaction. Government is disappointed by S&P's decision to downgrade Ghana despite the bold policies implemented in 2022 to address macro fiscal challenges and debt sustainability, which have been significantly exacerbated by the impact of these global external shocks on the economy. Continues to say that the government has implemented key revenue and expenditure measures, including the 30% cut in discretionary expenditures, the delays in the passage of key revenue measures introduced in the 2022 budget, affected revenue performance in the first half of the year. However, all the revenue measures introduced in the 2022 budget, including the review of the MDA fees and charges bill, the tax exemption bill, the e-levy bill, have all now been promulgated by Parliament. These fiscal measures are now in full implementation mode to support our fiscal and debt sustainability policies. The government is committed and is confident that it will successfully emerge from these challenges in the shortest possible time, as we have demonstrated the track record to do so in the Akufo-Addo-led government. So just a final point on this. A current engagement with the International Monetary Fund for a program incorporating our enhanced domestic program is expected to support our drive to restore and sustain macroeconomic stability, debt sustainability, and promote growth and job creation whilst ensuring social protection to achieve our vision of a Ghana beyond aid. Benjamin. So that's government's response to that. And, I mean, the bit on the impact of COVID-19 and the Russian invasion of Ukraine.
The statement says it's magnified. They magnified the situation.
Yes. So, I mean, I just wanted to bring that back because yesterday we highlighted that according to the report by S&P, these factors magnified our problem. And so it's important to pay attention to the use of the word magnified. When something magnifies something, doesn't necessarily cause it, or it worsens an already troubling situation. I leave you to be the judge of that, Benjamin. But you just want to introduce our guests, and we'll zoom into that particular conversation.
All right, so we'll be getting to our guests shortly, but those are the dynamics in there that have been painted for us. And we also know that former President Mahama has been responding to the situation. He's been talking about where we find ourselves currently. Let's just take a quick look at that, and then we shall get to our guests. And so the statement reads, at least it's a post on social media, there appears to be no end to the problems with the Ghanaian economy with the recent downgrade to CCC Plus, or C-junk status, as he puts it. The steep depreciation of the Ghana cedi in recent days clearly shows that the mid-year review of the 2022 budget failed to win back the confidence of the investor community and the Ghanaian public. Unfortunately, no credible remedial plans have been put forward by the government to salvage the economy. A national dialogue on the economy, bringing some of our best brains together, will serve as well, even as we prepare for debt restructuring and the negotiation of an IMF program. And those are the thoughts shared there on Facebook by former President John Dramani Mahama. Let's quickly get to our guests who join the conversation now. We have Professor Godfred Bokpin, lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School. Prof, a very good morning to you. Thank you for joining the conversation.
Yes, good morning. Good morning to your cherished listeners and viewers.
It's good to have you. I am here together with Bernice Abu-Baidoo Lansah. We'll be engaging you on these all-important matters. But Any surprise, the reaction of government to the latest downgrade by Standard & Poor's? Were you expecting this like Bernice was? Were you not expecting it? And what is the tenor of government's response for you?
I think that from the side of the rating agency, there's no surprise in there, actually.
Right.
I think...
So you expected a downgrade. You saw it coming.
Yes. Yes. Because we had said earlier that the 2022 budget and the enhanced measures the government announced were not enough in charting a fiscal sustainability path. Not enough. And then also when you look at the revenue measures that were introduced, of course, you can say that with the delay implementation of e-levy, it impacted the outcome. But it's not just the delay. This was a matter of poor forecasting, okay, an exaggeration of what could have been derived from e-levy. And we had said that the premises of e-levy, the underlying assumptions, were not realistic. As a tax handle to introduce, it was problematic. But government was so hopeful of generating over 6 billion cedis in the 2022 budget. The point also is that you know that the budget statement is not only for the consumption of the Ministry of Finance. Stakeholders are interested. This is a small open economy. If you look at our debt structure, we have commercial holdings, investors, offshore investors. So what it means is that if there is very little credibility in your policy statement, and the assumptions underlying your forecasting are unrealistic, the market can easily see that. When they see that, they will discount such news. That's what is happening. It's a matter of lack of credibility in the government policy statements, projections, and all of that. So when you project that you're going to raise 6 billion cedis, only to revise that to less than 1 billion cedis in just a matter of months, what signal does that send to the market?
Actually revised to just about 10%, 611 million cedis.
You understand that? So these are issues that I think the government needs to take a critical look. And of course, and then again, the reaction from the Ministry of Finance, well, that is also to be expected because they've been at the receiving end, right? But if you ask me, it's almost like majoring on the minor. Why am I saying so? To what extent can you fight these rating agencies? Because the data they have referenced and all of that, they are all in the public domain. Okay, if you look at it from the local, even think tanks here, we've raised issues. Okay, and then you look at government's own drive of fiscal consolidation that is heavily revenue based, with very little expenditure cuts. Okay, probably a combination of that will be more helpful, right? The necessary expenditure cut from the executive and all of that would help. We are not seeing that. Okay, the market is not seeing what the government is seeing. But it's not sufficient for the government to be confident about its own policy. The market must be at the same level also. But the next question you need to ask yourself really is that this rating, what will you do? Because already we have been priced out from the international capital market. I'm sure you are aware. There is no way Ghana can enter the international capital market to go and borrow. We have been locked out. That what we need to do now, probably on the back of an IMF program, will be how to re-enter the market, okay? Because when the government announced on the 1st of July of an engagement with the IMF, we saw how the spread in the secondary bond market actually narrowed. But right now, it has risen far higher, okay? So our bonds are trading in terms of the spread, close to 2,000 basis points above the U.S. Treasury yield. Okay, if you look at that, that is nothing but to cement our status as a debt-distressed country. That is a fact. You cannot be emotional about that. It's driven by the data also. But of course, we know the global imbalances and how that affects Africa broadly, not only Ghana. But to a certain extent, we've brought this upon ourselves. And you don't see In fact, even if you look at the media review and all the measures they have announced, and you do the forecasting, you don't see a debt sustainability being anchored firmly, particularly when it relates to the variables of fiscal balance, real interest rate, real GDP growth. Already we have revised our GDP growth. In 2022 budget, the government was hoping to achieve inflation of 8% with a symmetrical rate of 2%. Just a matter of months, look at where inflation is, and look at where government has revised that to now. So I think it has also a bit to do with the forecasting, okay, and a certain posture of government that seems to be at variance with the reality and what the data is telling us. And I think that is a bit worrying, because if we are all looking at the same data, then the divergence shouldn't be that wide. But if you see the forecasting, if you see the variance and all of that, you get the impression that we are not driven by the data. And if we are not driven by the data, then that is quite worrying. And that is why we will make statements that really will turn out to be exactly the opposite. As government assume a certain posture, they will not go to the IMF, everything is on course, only to make a quick U-turn. Look, it doesn't help. And the reason I'm saying that doesn't help, and government will have to adopt that humble position, engage broadly, build consensus on the way forward, even as they engage the IMF, is very important, because the nature of our economy and the shareholding structure, the investor base of our debt stock is such that our economy is susceptible to investor sentiment and market sentiment. And so whatever you do here, people are interested way beyond the borders of this country. You're forecasting what the data is. So if we are all not speaking the same language and you want to create the impression to investors that things are okay when the actual fact they are not, then they will punish you. And remember, it's not like Ghana has defaulted. In the financial market, it's the fear of it that paralyzes the market. It's not the actual default itself. It's the fear, the perception, the perceived increased default. Okay, probability of defaulting, that is what worries the market more. And the market will hold out for a higher yield, okay, as a way of seeking higher protection from the perceived default. And that is why we have been priced out of the international capital market.
Right.
Hold that there and come to the domestic market. You can see how the domestic market is also reacting. We are getting to the point where the domestic market itself is closing the government out. Right? If you look at the rate at which the government is borrowing, you can't continue like that. You will get to a point the domestic market may price you out. Then the only viable option left will be to resort to Bank of Ghana with printing of cedis. That has its own inflationary pressures. It has its own
okay, Prof.
The local currency.
Right. Yeah. Just a quick one in there. I just wanted to clarify. So you see that from where we are headed, we've been driven out of the Eurobond and international market, so to speak.
Yes.
That we could be crowded
completely.
So we could be crowded out of the local market as well, which would then leave us with just the central bank to print money, and that also has its consequences. That's what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay.
Right. That's what we are heading towards.
Right. Prof, so in its response to this latest downgrade by S&P, government expresses disappointment and says that, it was expecting, the sense you get from the response is that government was expecting not anything of this sort because of what it refers to as bold policies and decisions it took. And they cite examples about the 30% reduction or cut in discretionary expenditure, the review of the MDA fees and charges bill, the tax exemption bill, the e-levy bill and all. Do you agree that these policies are bold ones to take us out of the situation that we find ourselves in?
They are necessary, but they are not sufficient. They are not adequate to guarantee debt sustainability in the medium term. They are not. That is the truth. I don't think the rating agency is saying that they do not acknowledge these measures and all of that, but they are not sufficient. Okay, the hard bit that government needed to do, which I think would also include reducing the size of the government. I think what was on this network where I said that Côte d'Ivoire has 32 ministers. They reduced it from 41 to 32. Ghana has this number, for what end? In your first term, you made a case, given the enormity of the challenge, that this is the way it could be resolved. But clearly, the size has not demonstrated greater value. Okay, and in challenging, difficult times like this, you need to demonstrate that you yourself, you are sacrificing, right? That you are one with the citizens, you are one with investors, and all of that. Your cost-cutting measures are real, that there's enough monitoring, reporting, disclosure, transparency that allows people to see the savings and how the savings are being applied and all of that. You need to demonstrate that. Beyond that, remember that, the traditional Western idea of market is driven by knowledge. So people are knowledgeable in the field enough to understand what is happening, to look at the data and see what. So, look at all the interventions and look at the fiscal balance government is hoping to achieve in a year. Okay. So how does that lend to fiscal sustainability in the next 1 year, 2 years, and the rest of them? But remember that as you do expenditure cut, fiscal consolidation, heavily predicated on expenditure cut, expenditure rationalization, prudent spending, fine. It has implications for growth in the short term. So growth will have to be sacrificed. And that is why we have revised our growth downward. But we all know that the most effective way to manage your debt is to grow your economy. And when you expand the economy, because your debt repayment capacity is a function of your GDP growth, it's a function of your export earnings, it's a function of your revenue generation. These three are very important. So you need to look at how all these measures would impact these three put together. Then you know that there isn't much that we can achieve from the current measures. If these measures were sufficient in themselves, what would be the need to turn to the IMF?
Right.
And then I'll also tell you why this the spread in the international capital market is widening. When the government made the announcement, it came down. The long delay, okay, because the government needed to develop its own program, which it will present to the IMF. Remember, the IMF doesn't develop a program for a country. It's Ghana government program supported by the IMF. Ghana government must take that initiative and develop that program as a basis of engagement and all of that. We've seen how it was done in 2014, right from the Century Consensus, the homegrown fiscal consolidation. Of course, within 3 months or so of implementation, it became clear that the homegrown policy under President Mahama wasn't working. So they made a call to the IMF on August 6th. At that time, there was a program on hand to some extent, right? Again, apart from that, we had the Ghana Shared Growth and Development Agenda 2, 2014 to 2017, and all of that. So the government we need to stop this propaganda, emotional-driven, economic-based policy management, okay, and get to real, because the economy is real.
Prof, it's interesting you mention emotional-led economic decisions. So you earlier mentioned that the facts or the data point to this recent downgrade by S&Ps. Do you believe that government is putting out this posture so that it can maintain the little confidence that exists towards the Ghanaian economy, or it clearly is disregarding the data, or doesn't have the right data at all?
Well, what I see is that naturally that will be the reaction from anyone who is at the receiving end, right? And try to maybe create some kind of doubt about the reports and all of that. But the point that I'm making is that what do you gain by fighting that? What are the issues? What issues do you have with the methodology, the data, and all of that? Beyond the rating, what is the reaction from the domestic market? What is the rate at which the government itself is borrowing from the domestic market? Check the Eurobond market. Look at the spread. The spread right now is close to 2,000 basis points above the U.S. Treasury yield. I think apart from Zambia and one other African country, we are third in terms of the the spread also. So apart from the S&P, we have other rating agencies, we have other think tanks, units that have similarly made similar conclusions. So the data is there. You can look at the data. The data should speak to us. Let's not take ourselves from the data. Remember, macroeconomic environment data is live, it's real. You can see it. And from that, you can make projections. And that is why I said earlier that I have a little concern about a certain level of optimism from government that does not mirror the reality. And it turns out to be the opposite, exactly. And that is worrying.
So what do you think is causing this? So what do you think is causing this? Like I'm asking, do you get a sense that this is to portray a certain control of the situation? Is it that government wants us to believe that we've got everything under control and probably maintain the little confidence that exists? Or this is just blatant disregard for the facts and, you know, just living in a different world of its own?
Yeah, that disconnect, I find that a bit difficult to get along with. I can't really pin an explanation to that, but you see that consistently now. You see the variance between government projections and then the actual, and then you ask yourself, what are the assumptions underlying the forecast? Okay, what interpretation do we put on the data? Do we just assume that suddenly things will just turn out to be the way we want it, or what? Because remember, countries that developed, they were intentional, and they were driven by the data. Okay, so if you are driven by the data, it makes you humble because you know that, hey, this is what the data is saying. If we do want to change the outcome, we have to do A, B, C, and the rest of them. If you are not willing to do that, and then it's a bit worrying. And when it happens that way, because then the market will read a deeper meaning into that, and they will punish you. They will punish you.
So, Prof, we're yet to get at least even a word on what the latest is with regards to our IMF program and our talks with the IMF. But as it stands now, where are we heading from where you sit? We heard from the Vice President, who got a little bit of bashing when he said that things may get worse before they get better. But from where you sit, what does it look like for you in the coming months and weeks?
I think we should brace ourselves for some challenges, headwinds. When the Vice President said that, I knew he was looking at the data. You know, when you look at the data, we are not going to get out of this that easily. We have to take some haircuts, some painful adjustments that we have to go through as a country. And that is where we need to recognize what the challenges are and come to terms with the reality and see how we can get Ghanaians along. It's very important. Look, we are not getting out of this that easily. The adjustment process we need to get through to bring our debt to a sustainable level is going to be painful. It's going to be painful. The sacrifices will be painful. We need to, it may get a little worse before it improves. And the challenge is that it never improves to the point where it benefits the ordinary Ghanaians. Then we are back in that cycle, right? Because 2024 election is just around the corner, right? So we only have this year and maybe middle part of next year. Then we switch into the election mode. Once we switch into the election mode, data doesn't speak as much as propaganda and all of that. So it's all about election. It's all about vote. That was what we did in 2020. So whilst government was blaming excessively the current challenges on Ukraine and COVID-19, we forgot that how we manage the monetization and commercialization of our democracy, which also showed its ugly heads in 2020, contributed to the current mess that we have to deal with. This is the reality.
Let's juxtapose two opposing sides. I want to look at how the NDC is looking at this picture, economic snapshot, and what the government has been telling us. We've heard from former President Mahama, and just to quote him, what he puts on social media, he says, quote, The steep depreciation of the Ghana cedi in recent days, and we can touch on that as well, Prof, clearly shows that the mid-year review of the 2022 budget failed to win back the confidence of the investor community and the Ghanaian public. But this is the crucial point I want to make. He says, unfortunately, no credible remedial plans have been put forward by the government to salvage the economy. No credible remedial plans. Put that side by side with what government tells us. The government, in that statement, is disappointed by S&P's decision to downgrade Ghana despite the bold policies implemented in 2022 to address macro fiscal challenges and debt sustainability, which have been significantly exacerbated by the impact of these global external shocks on the economy. It goes on to talk about the 30% cuts in discretionary expenditures, among others. Has government been that bold in dealing with our economic situation post engaging the IMF?
No, that is not coming across strongly. I appreciate and sympathize with government that they are making the effort and all of that. The point is that, yes, necessary, but they are not sufficient. That is the point. So this is not like somebody is anti-republic or so. The market is broad, right? And the market is reading meaning into all of that. So if you look at what is happening, I mentioned to you the domestic market, even forget about the international capital market. You see the reaction from the domestic market and you realize that the much needed confidence that we were hoping that the media review would generate, that hasn't happened. Okay, government needs to do a little bit more. Remember these 30% cuts here and there, they are just some aspects of what we call a program. Government needs to put a program together that the IMF can support. I haven't seen that as of now. Okay, that is needed, and that is different from Ghana Care or Batampa program. That is different from saying I've cut expenditure by 30% or this or that. We are talking about a program with underlying forecasting, underlying debt sustainability analysis, projections, GDP growth projection for the next 3, 4, 5 years or so, and all of that. So that is what the market needs right now.
Let's take a look again at the different dynamics. We've heard from Dr. Marcus Ibe-Yeboah, who himself has been a member of the Finance Committee of Parliament, I think former member of Parliament for New Drabin South. And he has been a bit critical of his own administration. He has said that things are not well and that we need to get an IMF program as quickly as possible. Then we hear from Mr. President saying that there have been engagements with the IMF and that even as early as next week, we could have some agreements. Is that practical? Is it practical? And what would you want to see from any such agreements or engagements with the IMF, looking at where we find ourselves
the government was saying that as early as next week, they could have an agreement?
Some sort of agreement. He has hinted at that recently.
Well, the good news from that will be that government is willing to see to the end of a program with the IMF, which is very good. Okay, and the reason I say that is good is that if you look at the poster of the government before 1st July, and then post 1st July, that is an admission, a recognition that the problem is beyond homegrown measures, and therefore we need this kind of engagement with the fund. Typically, the negotiation and all of that will take a while, and all of that. Even in 2014, when government made a call to the IMF on August 6th, even when we had the homegrown fiscal consolidation derived from Royal Senchi, and then also the Ghana State Growth and Development Agenda 2, and all of that, the call was made on August 6th. The program kicked in on April 3rd, 2015. Okay, so look at it. August 6, 2014, the program kicked in April 3, 2015. Okay, so designing a program is a very intensive, it requires that technical insight and all of that, and the necessary data gathering, modeling, and all of that. So if to say that the program could be agreed maybe next week or so, I have not heard that though myself, but I think there's a lot of engagement that will need to take place before we have a program agreed that will have to go to the IMF Executive Board for approval and all of that. So still a long way to go. But the good news is that the government is committed. The government wants the program to happen and all of that. It's not only government. I mean, this is what we have been calling for. We did so not because we would choose the IMF over our own sovereignty in managing our own economic affairs. What we failed to do over the years is what has brought us here. So the IMF is more or less a last resort now. That's a last resort. It's not like it's a first resort. Okay, and if we make it look like getting a good deal from the IMF is an achievement, that is not an achievement. Okay, because that's the last resort. The first resort is you being in charge and doing the right thing systematically, persistently, and getting the results that you desire. And because when you get to the point where you show up at the IMF, well, if you get a good deal, how does that represent performance? That doesn't represent performance. We are in a mistake. We need to get out of this.
Just to run this by you as well, it's quite a list, but I want you to just follow me on this and tell me what you think. You can pick and choose about what will work for Ghana. Steve Manteyao, Dr. Steve Manteyao of the Public Interest Accounts Committee has, of course, formally, yes, has been speaking about our economy. He's been posting on social media. And recently he came out with a 17-point homegrown strategy for getting Ghana out of its current difficulties. He posted on social media. It's not the first time he's basically reposting. And he says, and I'd just like you to walk with me through this and then focus on the ones that you agree with. 1, cuts the size of government to 50, not more. I'm sure he's referring here to ministerial positions. 2, abolish all deputy director positions created in SOEs and parastatals after 2017. Deputy directors should go. 3, reduce number of presidential staffers. 4, make free SHS progressively free. Parents must pay for feeding if they opt for boarding. 5, convert teacher trainee and nurse trainee allowances to students' loan. 6, restore road tolls, but this time collect upfront, incorporating it into roadworthy collections. 7, abolish e-levy to grow Momo business and tax the telcos for the resulting growth in income. 8, prioritize the APFA expenditure to focus more on job creation. 9, stop further disbursements to the National Cathedral. 10, abandon the Ejapa deal. 11, implement the tax exemption law. 12, undertake lifestyle audits for tax purposes. 13, show greater commitment to fighting corruption. 14, remove ministerial discretion on capping of the stabilization levy to grow the fund. 15, restore distribution service charge 2 in the electricity tariff formula. 16, implement measures to stem illicit financial flows. And 17, crucially, abolish ex gratia. Which of these would you pick? Which of these would you say at an imminent level we could be looking at or should be doing?
Okay, so you can categorize that into 2, expenditure-based and then revenue-based. So let's look at the revenue-based. Abolish e-levy. I support that 100%. And I will not change my view because e-levy is anti-growth. E-levy is regressive. If you look at the growth potential of the digital economy, it's inappropriate to introduce e-levy at the rate we even have it right now. So that should be abolished. Clear. Then we are also looking at the exemption. Exemption bill has been passed. Good. It means that government is already thinking in that direction. Great. Then you're also looking at maybe some audit lifestyle, revenue leakages, the rest of them. Broadly, we need to look at that. Then also, we need to look at taxation of high net worth individuals. We need to begin that conversation, right? We need to begin that conversation and align the data and the data gathering system and all of that to make sure that we are able to, those who are worthy, right, are able to put a lot more on the table to aid the recovery and then our inclusive growth. That's one. Then, crucially, the expenditure side. Reduce the number of ministers. We have said that before, right? We told you the number of ministers, Côte d'Ivoire is operating with, right? So we can make some savings from there. Apart from that, they're even reducing the ministry, right, to about 20, and then the number of ministers, we can make a lot of savings. You can check the Appropriation Act 2021 and look at allocations to almost all those ministries and all of that. If you collapse a good number of them, those savings are immediately available. Great. Then, look, and even if you talk about even pre-senior high school, to date, how much have we spent? In dollar terms, how much have we spent? Okay. Meanwhile, the country that claims cannot fund pre-senior high school is able to accommodate annually $3 billion annually in corruption-related activities in the public sector, including procurement, infractions, and all of that from the Auditor General's report. It's $3 billion annually. Okay? So if you look at the leakages that we are able to accommodate as a country, pre-senior high school is not a problem. Okay, if we are able to do the necessary expenditure cut and all of that, you realize that pre-senior high school is so small in this discussion. But unfortunately, we are making it look as though pre-senior high school is the reason we are in this mess. No, we are majoring on the minor. Let's focus on the corruption leakages in government, and let's see how we can tighten all those loose ends, okay, and make sure that the little we are able to generate, we are able to use them optimally, value for money. If we did that, we realize that free senior high school is not a problem. I'm not saying that we can't review it, but what I'm saying is that putting it side by side, all that is happening, we realize that we are comparing apples to something perhaps infinitesimal. That is how I look at it. You check the Auditor General's report. You check annually. Look, it's been documented that Ghana loses averagely $3 billion annually through corruption. If you open it up, you will see it manifesting in various channels, procurement, infractions, and all of that. But of course, this is not unique to only this government, right? This is Ghana. It cuts across different regimes. It's not like the previous government was an exception to this and all of that. But once we are at this stage and we are talking about it, let's build consensus along those lines and say that it is not only about we not being able to generate a lot of revenue, but we must focus on expenditure side, efficiency in an investment management process, close all the leakages. Studies have shown that Ghana loses as much as we are able to generate by way of tax revenue. This is real. Okay, so if we can focus on all of these things, you realize that how much are we getting from the IMF? Assuming we even get $3 billion, okay, which will be spread over a 3-year program or so, that is far less than how much we lose annually through corruption alone. Right. So if you look at the mathematics analysis, you realize that, look, we brought this upon ourselves. And if we want to get out of this, we must be bold. We must build consensus about where the critical issues are, and we must focus on those ones. If we could do that, if we did that, you realize that we'll be able to create fiscal space. It may not happen in a year, but if we sustain that consistently for the next 15 years or so, you will see the effect. You will see that. Because what we are asking for is not something we can deliver in a year or two or so. No. Look at Rwanda. For how long Kagame has been there, the consistency is beginning to show. If they are able to sustain that for the next 15 years, you will see where Rwanda will be.
Let me just sneak in this bit ahead of winding down on the conversation. There are two quick issues. Some have suggested there could be a further downgrade, and some are even referring to where we are now as junk status. If there is a further downgrade, which would mean maybe a CCC minus or anything below that, according to the ratings agencies, first of all, what would it take to get there? What would be the implications of that if we got there? And the other bit I want you to address quickly. We're getting into an electoral year. From next year, 2023, the politics will start, and then you know what happens. There'll be more spending. The political system will be charged and all of that. And usually it creates a sort of crunch in the economy. How do you foresee that too will impact our economy, and any program we could get from the IMF. So 2 things I want you to look at. A further downgrade. What could cause a further downgrade, and what would be the implications of same? And then, heading into an electoral year, what would be the impact on the economy, even if we got an IMF program?
Okay, I think that now that government is engaging the fund, the next round of rating, my expectation is that it will not be a downgrade. It will not be a downgrade. And also, if you look at the revenue measures that the government has put in place, if they're able to monitor that effectively, with the exemption regime and all of that, then probably we should see some improvement. As I said earlier, these are necessary, but not that they are sufficient. So I am not expecting a downgrade. I mean, I can't wait that for Ghana at this stage. Even with the current status, with all these downgrades and all of that, it has implications for banking sector stability, it has implications for financial institutions that have positions, have invested in Ghana government instrument, because in the risk-based capital management, if the risk goes up, then it means that financial institutions have to make additional covering in terms of bringing in additional capital. If they can't afford that, then it means that they will exit. So that itself will have implications for portfolio flows and all of that. So it doesn't have to get worse than this now. What we need to do now is, how do we work hard? And also the ministry needs to communicate timely disclosure of information. For instance, government announced 30% count, fuel this, fuel that, and all of that. There should be regular updates, because the market needs information. Regular updates, the savings, how they are being applied, tax compliance measures, expenditure rationalization measures, and all of that. Regular updates, disclosure, transparency, and all of that. Speaking the truth, right? This is not about emotions and all of that. So, but I know the government is doing quite well in some areas, but I think we need to intensify that. Now, the biggest threat to any IMF program right now, assuming that happens anytime soon, will be the 2024 election. How do we design a program that can offset the usual political business cycle and the fiscal indiscipline that is associated with almost all the competitive elections that we've had, with the exception of 2004? With the exception of 2004, so that we can undo the election excesses, which tend to also fuel inflationary expectations.
Prof, so I'm looking at the front page of the Daily Statesman, and the president says there's hope for economic rebound. He was speaking on North Star Radio yesterday. Now, the president admits that there are difficulties, and he says he'll be the last person to minimize the challenges that we are going through. But in assuring Ghanaians, this is what he says. He says, this government took our economy from one of the lowest growth rates in our modern history when I came into office in 2017 and brought it up to one of the fastest growing economies in the world. It was this government which did that, and this government was able to steer Ghana through the COVID-19 pandemic. Looking at what the president says was done in 2017, obviously the circumstances aren't the same. But are you confident, based on the policies government says it's taking, based on its decision now to go to the IMF, that we will see what the president is touting here in a few months or weeks to come? We will see this government take us back to that status that we were in 2017 when it took over.
Okay, thank you very much. I agree to some extent, because Ghana has a high growth potential. We know that. How do we turn that growth potential into actual? That is where the challenge is. So it is good that the president is signaling that we can get there. We can get to the high growth trajectory that we saw 2017, 2018, but fine. But even in 2017 and 2018, we had issues with the growth. We are talking about quality growth. We are talking about inclusive growth. We are no longer going to celebrate growth that is driven largely by hydrocarbon production, oil and gas, then mining, because that kind of growth does not come along with job creation. So if the president wants to achieve that, then we are saying that we don't want to achieve that anymore through oil and gas volume production, favorable world oil price. But we must look at the labor-intensive subsectors of the economy that can actually drive growth. If that labor-intensive subsectors of the economy drive growth, then growth will be sustainable. Then growth will be job-rich. That is what we are talking about. And what comes to mind readily will be agriculture and agribusiness. We must invest appropriately, efficiently, prudently in agriculture and agribusiness. That is a must. If we had done that, I can assure you that our inflation wouldn't have been where it is now. Because if you look at food inflation and even local inflation, you can see that is also rising. You can't blame that solely on bullets flying across borders in Ukraine, Russia. No. That is more a reflection of domestic policy failure also. So we must do that. So to get to that high growth trajectory like we saw before, we must focus on agriculture, agribusiness, link that to industrialization, and make sure that we spend efficiently and prudently to oil the growth drivers of the economy. That way, we will see job-rich growth. Because from 2017, whilst we saw growth going up, we also saw unemployment going up because that growth wasn't job-rich. It was jobless growth. We are no longer going to celebrate any growth like that anymore. We are looking at inclusive, broad-based growth. Growth that also comes along with job creation. That is more important now. And we know, even from the social accounting metrics, that the output multiplier, income multiplier, and then employment multiplier from increased output in agriculture is one of the highest in Ghana. And the inequality reducing effect of agricultural productivity growth is so high, above 40%. So what that means is that if we are driven by the data, for instance, if you increase agribusiness output by $1 million, that alone will create 750 jobs along the path. This is evidence on the ground. Okay, so if you want job-rich growth, you want growth that will benefit Ghanaians, then you are looking at the growth being driven by the intensive labor subsectors of the economy. If the growth is driven by the subsectors of the economy where majority of Ghanaians derive their livelihood from, then that growth will benefit Ghanaians. But if the growth is driven by hydrocarbon production, if the growth is driven by oil and gas, how many Ghanaians draw their livelihood from that subsector? How many Ghanaians draw their livelihood from mining, which is these days with greater reliance on technology and the rest of them? So let's look at it broadly. Let's look at where we can induce growth that will be more inclusive, and growth can only be sustainable when it is inclusive. Those are the things that we need to focus our attention on.
Grateful for your time this morning, Professor Godfred Bokpin, lecturer at the University of Ghana Business School, and we've been discussing government's response to S&P's recent downgrade of the Ghanaian economy. We've been touching on what government should be doing and whether the policies government refers to as bold are actually bold indeed and will take us out of the woods. Benjamin and I have been having this conversation with Professor Godfred Bokpin. Thank you once again, Prof, for your time.
Thank you, and have a blessed day. God bless you.
Bless you too.
All right, so Professor Godfred Bokpin, the lecturer, University of Ghana Business School. It's been quite a conversation, hasn't it? At least we can recall that he says he's not expecting a further downgrade. Hopefully something happens, but the imminent need for a program is clear. And hopefully we get there as quickly as possible, as Dr. Marcus Ibeyabua will paint the picture.
Yes, and he also mentions that we would have to take some really hard, painful decisions if we need to get out of the woods, and agrees with the Vice President when he says things will get a bit tough before they get better. So we've been asked to brace ourselves. Hopefully we would see some improvement in the economy as the President assures that there will be a rebound. Well, we're just preparing to get your thoughts and comments on the issues we've been discussing so far. throughout yesterday, and even with Professor Bokpin's response, the posture of government has come to play. For you as a citizen, how do you feel about how government is handling all of this? We've also been talking about the premixed fuel issue and what our investigations have uncovered about a cartel of persons linked to government hoarding the commodity and making it difficult for fisher folk, especially in the central and Volta regions, to access the commodity. Well, before we bring you that, university students have started choosing which lecture to attend because, I mean, this is a measure of cutting down cost of transportation. For many of them who do not reside on campus, this is the only buffer against the frequent hikes in transport fares. Manuel Kranting has our latest edition of the Joy Living Standard series.
Instead of attending classes from Monday to Friday, I now have to choose 3 of the days that I have a lot of packed classes and then show up in school.
Yes, we are driving empty in the campus because not all of the students have money to be taking taxi.
Me moving from home to my workplace, I realized that the transportation at the end of the month was more than the salary I was receiving, so I had to quit the job.
It's rush hour Monday evening, and at the Legon bus stop, it's a hustle as conductors scramble for passengers. Behind these faces that take turns to join the vehicles are real struggles by students to even get to school in the first place.
When I started Legon in level 100, I used to pay 2 cedis 70 pesos for transportation. That was if I had a straight car from where I lived to Legon first. Fast forward, it moved to 3 cedis, then 4 cedis. In fact, at the beginning of the year, transportation from where I lived to Legon was 5 cedis, 50 pesos. But currently, I have to pay 8 cedis, 50 pesos to get to Legon every day. And that is too much for me.
Inside the university's campus, I meet final year consumer science student Nana Abena Grant. She, like many of her non-resident mates, are now rationing their class attendance, cherry-picking which lectures they can miss.
My first year, I had classes from Monday to Friday, and I made sure that I attended all my classes because it was important for me to be present in class and for that to reflect on my grades. But fast forward 3rd year and now in my final year, I had to find ways to cut costs. So instead of attending classes from Monday to Friday, I now have to choose 3 of the days that I have a lot of packed classes and then show up in school. As much as I want to be present in class from Monday to Friday, because of the economic situation, I cannot. It's not an option for me. I used to work to support myself in school. And then this year, the prices of transportation just kept increasing because of course, the hike in fuel prices. Now, comparing me moving from home to my workplace, I realized that the transportation at the end of the month was more than the salary I was receiving, so I had to quit the job.
Nana Abena's grades are now at stake. Her lecturers are on her neck for what she has close to no control over.
Recently, for instance, I was reprimanded by a lecturer for not showing up to her class for a number of days. And so she was complaining, and I had to explain the situation to her. But of course, you know, sometimes those explanations, they expect you to be in class, so you have to be in class. You can't make excuses because you are facing financial challenges with regards to transportation. When you're in your first year, you are eager to show your parents your grades. So once you check your MIS web and then you make the grades, the A's and the B's are flowing, you're in a hurry, you're in a haste to show it to your parents. Oh, look at this, look at that. But now if they ask you, like, oh, the lectures have not released the results yet. That's what the song they are singing now. The grades have moved from A, B to a C now, and you know that you can do better, given the conducive environment and the circumstances, you can do better. But because you have to, find your way around issues, have to work and do this and that here and there. So the grades are not the best. And what can you do?
For many students in Nana Abena's situation, their woes are compounded by the university's perennial accommodation challenge, especially because prices of off-campus accommodation spaces are way over the roof now. What's the solution? Patching.
I couldn't get accommodation when the portal was opened, and I reached out to some of my friends to find out if they could help me out. Then unfortunately, one of my SHS juniors was able to get accommodation in one of the halls. So he asked that I can come around and then stay with him. So he's the one I'm currently staying with.
Kwame Adamu, not his real name, is in his third year at the university. Born and bred in the Upper East region, Kwame has no relatives in Accra. Kwame tells me how embarrassing it is to go through the university living literally under the care of friends.
The right to do certain things in the room. You can't say certain things are going on and you can't contribute because you are not a legal member in the room, so you don't have that freedom to express yourself or to even do certain things that you want to do openly. You can't do it. So certain things, an issue occurs in the room, they try to look on you because you are the purchase. Anything that is wrong, you are the one who are causing it because we are the legal members. We're not doing anything wrong. I remember one time he warned me and he told me that he will pack my things out of the room. I thought it was just a joke, and actually I came back from lectures one day and my things were found outside by the door, and I spoke to one of the legal members in the room. He said he brought me in, he brought me back in and said he will speak to the guy too. And the guy is in level 100 for that matter, and I'm in 300. And I really felt bad because the level 100 who just came and you are doing this to, if I was in SHS, I'll be your senior and you're doing this to me. But that's how it is. You have nothing to do because you're a pressure and you just have to go by it.
After a very long day in class, many non-resident students at the University of Ghana, they come here to join public transport, or trotro as they call it, to find their way home. Well, the effect is a lot of the taxis on campus remain empty.
During the increase of the petrol right now in campus, sometimes I used to have sympathy for the students. Some of the students that don't have that much money, maybe in class, some of them have 4 classes in a day, taking taxi in and out. For Volta Hall to Despera is 8 cedi that we used to charge, which is a little bit very expensive. Yes, we are driving empty in the campus because not all of the students have money to be taking taxi.
Call it a problem of the economy spiraling through all corners of student life. Till the government fixes the situation, take it easy on university students you meet. They may just be another Nana Abena or Kwame Adamu. Manuel Cranting, JoyNews, Accra.
And there you have it, Manuel Cranting out on the beat, Living Standards series. It piqued my interest because I remember, being on that same campus doing the trek, Charlie no be joko. Commonwealth Hall to JQB, Jones Quarter Building, hey, you feel it. And sometimes you can have a lecture at JQB and then they tell you that maybe there's been a switch or something.
Oh, my goodness.
And then you have to go to the new end block, Charlie Manwaka. Hey.
Yeah.
You walk on campus.
Class exhausted. Charlie. I mean, walking is good.
No, it is, but sometimes...
But not before a 2-hour lecture, because you'll be exhausted. So basically, everyone is feeling a pinch of...
So taxis are somewhat empty because, you have to pay and fuel prices are high. And the people look at it and, Charlie, let me use my leg Benz rather than cough up some. And the lady who was speaking about, having to skip some lectures. Yeah. Basically now she's on some sort of ration.
Yeah, she's determining which of the lectures is important. So if I find myself in such a situation, I would go for the lectures that I struggle with. I mean, the courses that I struggle.
And the ones that you're...
And the ones that I'm a bit comfortable. I can rely on the lesson notes and the handouts and all those other things.
You do C.
But this is, it is a serious situation, and we hope the President's assurance will materialize soon, because I mean, you can imagine the impact on this on students. They are there to learn, they are there to study, but if it's so difficult for them to even go to lectures, that's a problem. It's problematic. It means for many of them, it will be not hitting their full capacity and not gaining all they can within the 4-year period that they have, or even more, depending on what courses they're reading. So it's now time to take your calls. It's now time to hear from you. What is your living standard like? How are you coping? What are your thoughts on this latest downgrade by S&Ps and government's response?
I think it would be interesting to find out, what are you skipping?
Yeah. We know about...
If any. Is there anything you're skipping?
We know about the meals.
We know about meals.
That already, yeah.
Those doing 010.
Some doing 001, and some doing 101. I don't know what your formation is like. While we wait for your calls to come through, and the number will be on your screen shortly, let's give you something to smile about. Hello, Ghana. Happy moment is here. Let's Storm World Cup Qatar 2020 with Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks, and Awake Drinking Water from Casapreco Company Limited. Simply buy your favorite Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks, and Awake Drinking Water, and text the 4-digit unique number in the neck of the bottle to short code *780 option 2, *780 option 2, and follow the prompts on all networks for free. Be one of the lucky winners to this year's World Cup in the monthly draw. You can also win TVs, fridges, microwave ovens, mobile phones, home theaters, free drinks, and more instantly. Please don't waste any time. Grab a bottle of Storm Energy Drink, Puma Soft Drinks, and Awake Drinking Water, and let's storm Qatar this World Cup. This promotion is on the NLA Caritas platform, and this advert is FDA approved. Remember, the terms and conditions apply. Benjamin?
So what are the terms and conditions? What are the terms and conditions of your eating, your economic life? I guess people have now had to sit down and these are my T's and C's. So 010, that's for and maybe fuel for the car. You have to ration because even, I'm sure people are cutting down on places they go to. I am cutting down. If it's not essential, I don't step out.
Well, we have a first caller. Hamza is joining us from Fisherman. Good morning to you, Hamza. Let's hear you.
Good morning, beautiful lady and Bernice. Thank you for the good work you are doing for Mother Ghana. It hasn't been easy when it comes to living standards recently. And, you know, one thing I'm very worried about is the people in authority not accepting responsibility and keep blaming other external whatsoever. You know, there are those external crisis, but then sometimes we have things that we have some money that will come to the government to cushion the people, the Ghanaians. But in our case, leaders don't seem to accept the responsibility. That is the reason why we keep suffering. The living standards keep worsening, and they are not ready to accept it. And again, we talk about the reshuffle of ministers and the government disagree with us. You know, it's all about not accepting responsibility. This Akufo-Addo government has made it. It's determined to hand over power to the next MPP government. And that is exactly what they are doing. You know, it has been that they've been planning this from 2008 when they lost power. And then they plan to rule the country for about 30 years. And you have a document that they call what is it, a JAPA or what government. This is what they have written in. And so he is not ready to listen to anybody. Then the institutions that will help him, execute what he has planned to rule the country for 30 years, they are there. The Supreme Court, you can see the recent rulings, the EC. And so they have planned to rule. And so we should leave it to them. They claim the country is for them. Let's leave it to them. Do whatever they want with it. If they are done after 30 years, they should hand it over to the competent.
Right, Hamza. We appreciate that you could join us. We'd have to take other callers now. Sorry about that. Please, when you call us, remember to keep your comments brief so we can take other people as well. Maswood is calling us from Mamobi. Hello, let's hear you, sir. Hello, do we have Maswood on the line? Hello? Oh, too bad we lost him there. Apologies for that, Maswood. We're deeply sorry about that. But do call us, and remember to mute your television set when you call us, and keep your comments as brief as possible. Hazel is joining us. Hello, Hazel. Good morning. Let's hear you. Good morning, Hazel.
Good morning.
Yes, let's hear you, please.
Hello.
Hazel, if you can hear us, just go ahead. Go ahead.
Well, we lost Hazel. Let's head to Wale Wale now. Sadiq joins us. Hello, Sadiq. Let's hear you. Hello, Sadiq. Do we have Sadiq on? Oh, too bad. We seem to have a challenge with the lines this morning. Apologies for that. Keep your calls coming through. I will take as many of them as we can. Hopefully, the lines will be favorable when you call. But basically, today we've been talking about the premixed fuel saga. And Benjamin, I mean, I remember we did this a couple of years ago. And listening to the president of the Canoe.
Yes, the Canoe Fisherman, Jojo Solomon. He makes it clear, right?
He makes it clear.
It was so stark what he said about the politics. I was stunned.
And I was happy he was being frank.
Very blunt about it.
That is what we should get to as a people. It's terrible. Look, even to the extent of changing toll booth attendants. I mean, when governments change, everything changes. Should it be so? Can't we have institutionalized employment? And, well, let's go to Tepa. Kojo Ejapong is joining us. Hello, Kojo. Let's hear you quickly, please.
Thank you very much for the opportunity. In fact, it's our government. Some of us, we are just disappointed. We stood in for this government. I'm a teacher, professional teacher. We were the village campaigning for him, thinking that something good will come out of our trusted president, Nana Akufo-Addo. But things are not just working, more especially in Asante region. So we're calling on the government to just, come. To come and settle things. If not that, 2024 will be a down deal for other parties in which we are not expecting. So things are not working.
Thank you, Kojo. We appreciate your time here this morning. Nana Sarah is joining us from Edriso. Nana, let's hear you.
Hello.
Hello, Nana Sarah. We can hear you. Please go ahead with your contribution.
Yes, please, my dear. Good morning. All what I'm trying to say is about the economic crisis that our country, Ghana, is going through today. There are measures for the government to cut down costs. One major one that I can directly come to think about is this ex gratia for the so-called government appointees, talking about ministers, MPs, and the others. It's a huge cost that is really draining the country's economy. I mean, like any other Ghanaian citizen, you work until your retirement. At your retirement age, you take your pension, only that you get every month until you die. So why should there be any extra something like ex gratia? The government appointees I'm talking about executive and the others, they are not the only employees that Ghana employs. But there are other government employees, public servants, and we take nothing more than our pensions when we go on retirement. So that ex gratia should be abolished as early as we can. Besides that, they are working on reducing the cost of fuel for government cars and this and that. I think it will go a long way to help the country, because we can't afford to be, feeding V8 vehicles, hundreds of them, that people drive up and down to their place of interest even apart from their working time, they use these cars for their private interest. I think we can go to think about all these things and bring down cost for the government so that we can probably sustain the free senior secondary school education. And that is a general thing for the country, for poor and for the rich. Thank you very much. I support Nana Akufo-Addo's initiative to more than 50%. But then he shouldn't be shy to bring certain things down so that he can sustain the economy. Thank you very much.
Great, Nana. Thank you for joining us this morning. Nana Sari joined us from Edreso in the Ashanti region. A very interesting way he concludes his comment by saying, I support you, Mr. President, but maybe we need to take hard decisions to enable you implement your policies. And yesterday in one of the papers, we saw the president say that don't touch my free senior high school policy. And he was speaking about the IMF program. And because there have been suggestions that there could be a review of the program based on our discussions with the IMF. We are yet to hear anything concrete on that, but the president says no. Comfort is calling us from Begro. Good morning, Comfort. Let's hear you. We lost her, Comfort. Sorry about that. Hopefully she'll be able to join us. We have a caller from Wa. He's called Alhaji, but Alhaji is a title. So I'd like to know your actual name, sir. Our caller from Wa. Hello? Oh.
It appears we've lost that one.
What's happening to our lines this morning? Apologies for that. We are genuinely sorry, but we'll
But don't let that prevent you from calling.
Exactly.
Still do call 0302-211-691 extension 2. We'd love to hear from you.
All right, Matilda joins us from Accra. Matilda, good morning. Let's hear you.
Yes, I think that just as the man said, all these ex-graduates should be slashed out. Because looking at where the economy is going, we, the masses, we are suffering. You get the teachers need to leave also. The masses need to leave. The youth are not, the youth are not getting jobs. And we need to cut down all these huge expenditures on the politicians to sustain the economy. You get it? So if at the end of the day, somebody's capital is just 200 cedis with children, how do you expect such people to survive? So we need to cut down all these hires because these politicians, we fuel them. Some of them get free accommodation. Some of them have their own security. Their mates are paid. A whole lot of incentives goes for them. At the end of the day, they have their pension kind of plan that government have for them. And they go every 4 years and take ex gratia. So I think that a huge sum of amount is being channeled into taking care of these politicians, which is really, really, really collapsing the economy. Because the last time I listened to the incentive they have, even they are traveling, they have some allowances for their traveling, allowances for their children, their wives, and they are taken care of while they are in office, everything. At the end, they have their funeral plan.
Yeah, Matilda, let me find out from you. So some have argued that these people work tirelessly for the nation, formulate laws, they help us move the country forward. Do you think that, is it that you don't feel they deserve it, or you think that the work they do in itself doesn't warrant such a retirement package? Okay.
I think it's overhyped. Teachers are doing their best, and they need to be taken care of. You get it? Doctors are doing their best. They need to be taken care of. Nurses are doing their best. They need to be taken care of. So why channel all the funds to only the politicians? You get it? A lot of nurses have come out. Even I have a lot of examples. They are not getting jobs. They are not placing them because they can't be paid. A lot of youth are coming out each and every year. They need to secure a job. But what is happening? There is no money to take care of them. So they are home. So do they think, sit down and analyze and see where the future of the nation, when all these chunk of youth are coming out every year from the formal, informal training sector, and they have no job to sustain them, Are they thinking about it? What do we say? To me, it's dangerous.
Right.
Then when you lock your door and you want to sleep, you don't know your fate.
Right,
But one hungry person can just break in because that person needs to survive.
Yes,
they need to eat.
Right.
And as the saying goes, a hungry man is an angry man. And everybody is a hungry man's target. So I think that we need to reconsider things. This ex-gratia is really collapsing the economy, and it needs to be slashed out. And also the incentive they have, the allowances are too much.
Okay.
They have about 20 allowances.
Matilda, well noted. Well noted. Thank you very much. I see you have some support in the background.
Matilda is coming.
Yeah, and I can hear there's a bit of a support in the background. So Matilda is speaking really passionately about this ex-gratia.
She's referencing. You see, I made mention of Steve Manteau's 17-point log. I was just about to get to that when Matilda came through, but I feel some of them are workable. I don't know. We still have time for some calls. I feel some of them are workable. Cutting the size of government to 50, not more. These deputy directors at the SOE dealing with that.
Benjamin,
some are very real.
We've had that conversation here before. I posed this question to one economist about whether we are taking political decisions at the expense of sound economic decisions. Look, we need a restructuring in this country.
We've had systems with far less than 100 ministers, haven't we?
Fair enough, but I'm saying what goes into bringing a government into power? Who are those who fund it? Who are those who invest it? What are the promises that are made them? So that it becomes very difficult for a government to now say, quote unquote, I want to take that reward I promised you when you invested in my campaign to be where I am today. It's intertwined. It's a myriad of challenges.
Remind me of a conversation I had over the weekend.
We need to look at that.
Let's take
some Musa is calling us from Wa. Hello, Musa. Let's hear you.
Yes. I think I'm attacked by Qatar. And
sorry, Musa, we are struggling. Yes. Can you please speak up a bit? Your voice is a bit hoarse. Can you speak up a bit? Hello, Musa? Oh, we lost Musa there. I was just asking him to speak up a bit. It was quite difficult.
It was a bit hoarse. It was difficult to get what he was saying.
Yeah, so Benjamin, so I'm saying, so you see, you go to a government and say, reduce the size. For you, sitting there, it's just about the size. But for that government, it is possibly...
So you're basically speaking about reforming our political party's structure.
Simple. Because you see, all that feeds into what we see with appointments. And I was reading a story just yesterday about the GMPC boss and how people workers say they don't like his attitude to work, and there are claims that he's related to somebody in government, and all these are allegations.
Oh, the new one?
Yes, but they fit into the conversation of why certain people are appointed and why we have the numbers that we have.
Maybe before we pick our next caller, the point I would make, though, is that this is more of a long-term measure, what you're proposing.
Yes.
In the immediate term, some of these other ones can be done.
Definitely. Let's go to La Paz now. Bernard is joining us from La Paz. Bernard, let's hear you.
Yeah, good morning, Bernice. I just want to contribute to the development of our country. At this time, what I'm also proposing is that it seems Ghana, we need a national agenda in most of our sectors. Usually, the political parties will come around with their political manifestos, and this keeps on happening. But if we can have a round-table discussion and have an agenda, any party that comes must follow. I hope this is one of the ways I think can help curtail most of our problems. Thank you.
Clearly. So I'm just using this as an example. So if we have an agenda, we have an NDPC, the National Development Planning Commission. Okay. So if I get you clearly, what you want as a citizen of Ghana is that, okay, Ghanaians have agreed that free SHS is what we want. So in your manifesto, tell us how best you will execute that, fitting into the general plan of the country, right? Okay, we lost Bernard there, but that's the sense I get from his comments. Emmanuel is joining us from Begro. How is Begro this morning, Emmanuel? Let's hear you.
Very, very nice. Very, very nice. It's only the living standard is bad. Hello?
I can hear you. Please go ahead.
Well, my suggestion is the size of the government is too big. They should have to reduce it with immediate effect. That is the side of the government. Then, all those allowances given to the governmental functionaries, all should be cancelled, all should be removed. After that, we sit up as a nation. It shouldn't be a partisan. We should sit up as a nation and plan for a common goal, which should be followed by every party when it comes to power. And I think everything will be okay.
Right, Emmanuel. Thank you very much. Okay.
My last point is agriculture. Agriculture too. We must go there. Can we have the land? I am a retired teacher now. I was studying a school, a primary school with a population of 400. I'm on retirement now. And I'm not farming. I'm having cassava now. About 3 acres. You see, so we can do something.
Right. Thank you very much, Emmanuel from Begro.
Bye-bye.
Is our last caller for today.
He actually added bye-bye too.
Bye, Emmanuel. Thank you so much for calling us. At least something to laugh about this morning. But before we go, just to remind you that the Graphic Business Stanbic Bank breakfast meeting is happening tomorrow and is live from 8 a.m. here on the JoyNews channel. And the focus will be living within our means, and considering all you've been sharing today.
What an apt topic.
Very apt.
So, living within our means, that is I couldn't think of a more appropriate subject for us to be delving into when it comes to this Graphic Stanbic meeting, considering the times and everything that we are facing. You don't want to miss that one. Come tomorrow, we'll be serving it to you hot, as we always do, on the AM show and beyond, so that you can catch all the action. But that is the latest that you can look forward to as far as the Graphic Stanbic breakfast meeting is concerned.
Right.
You've been having an interaction with them.
Yeah. Yesterday I spoke to the acting editor of Graphic Business, Mr. Benoni, and the manager for communications of Stanbic Bank, Mr. Kajolabi. And well, there you have it. So these are the panelists for tomorrow's meeting. We have Dr. Humphrey Ayim Dake, who is CEO, Red Moon Resources Limited, Dr. J.K. Kwache, Director of Research at the Institute of Economic Affairs, and Hamdiya Ismaila, General Manager, Venture Capital Trust Fund. Living within our means, an imperative for economic success, and that is the theme. It will be live here on the JoyNews channel for you, and we've been told that it will be interactive, so you can follow on our JoyNews page on Facebook and on Stanbic and Graphic Business Facebook page. And you can leave your comments there because opinions are welcome. This is all about us and finding the appropriate way to steer this country's economy to where we want it to be. Benjamin?
Well, I'll just add as we wrap that living within our means is something that we must do all the time, but it is even more imperative now in these perilous economic times because, Charlie, you know, be joke matter.
It is well. Well, on that note, it's goodbye from us, Benjamin and Bernice, and we're grateful that you can make time to join us today. We really appreciate it. We don't take it for granted. But do stay with us here on the JoyNews channel. Up next is News Desk with Samuel Kojobrace. Do stay.